Okay, that's just the Zoom part. Yeah, I don't see Harry yet. Yeah, let's just give it another. Well, we need to wait for Harry a little bit. And it's odd. This is unusual. We've only got one attendee so far out there in the audience.
You're going to have another one in a minute when my husband signs in.
Oh, okay. We won't fly so long.
He can't talk, though. He thinks it's a conflict of interest.
I don't know. I don't think you surrender your First Amendment rights when you get married, do you?
I think I'd have to ask Tim that.
Actually, Tim, yeah, what do you do if you have spouses both on the same legislative body? How does the Brown Act, is there any kind of spousal exception?
There isn't. You can imagine the struggle that is.
And
There's no danger here. My husband wants no part of being on the board.
He's a smart man.
yeah, all right. Okay, I'm still looking for Harry. Come on, Harry. Let's see. We know.
Should we have John call him?
John, would you mind calling or texting Harry? Thanks. We know he exists because he talked to John this morning, so he's definitely in town somewhere. Yeah, let me get ready here. Okay.
Okay, I spoke with Harry. He said he's got some issues. It says a meeting's already in progress or something. So we're sending him a new link just to make sure he's got the right one.
Okay. Well, let's give him another minute or two. I don't want to take too much of the, once we do need to start eventually here, but I know I'll start my timer here. Let's see how long. If he doesn't come in within a couple of minutes, we'll start. I guess, John, he could phone in if he can't get in any other way. Okay, 4 on that one. Let me see if he's over here. No. Nope. Okay, in about another half minute, we'll go ahead and start. Let's see, AGP, are you ready?
Yep, all ready on my end.
Great, thank you. I'll let you know here in a second. Okay, I think we better go ahead and start, and hopefully Harry will be able to make it in by the time we finish all the ceremonial part here. Excuse me. So, I hereby call this regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District to order. We have present 4 directors, so we have a quorum. Actually, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance first, and then I'll establish the quorum. So, Leah, if you'd be so good as to display the flag for us. Ah, right, there's the flag. Okay. So here we go. Ready? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So thank you, everybody. Let us see. So now to establish the quorum, we do have 4 of our 5 directors present. So present are Director Steidel, Vice President Dean, Director Gray, and myself. Also present District Council, Mr. Carmel, General Manager Weigold, Administrative Department Manager Pam Duffield, Finance Manager Denise Fritz, Utilities Manager and District Engineer Ray Dienzo, and Facilities Manager Carlos Mendoza. And of course, our Board Secretary, Ms. Leah Riedel. So welcome, everybody. And we're beginning to collect some attendees out here. As of presently, we're at 5. Still looking for Harry. So everybody's here. The President's report, I really have nothing to add at the moment, so we'll pass the President's report and move on to agenda review, additions and deletions. Does any board member have anything? And then Mr. Carmel, I think you have something.
I do.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Carmel.
Yeah, we had discussed canceling and rescheduling the closed session today, so I think this is the point in time that we just announced that it's being canceled and rescheduled.
Okay, so the closed session, which is our item 10 today, we will. This is canceled, and we will pick that up at another time. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, one other, just a change in the order of events. It's Gina Weigeld and I both think that in the hearing and appeals section at item 8, pardon me, let's do the hearing to discuss the final budget. Let's do that first, and then that would be item B, 8B, and then follow that with the stage 3 water issue. So, yes, Vice President Dean.
Director Farmer is in the attendees list.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Yes, I see. So welcome, Director Farmer. We'll get you in here with us in a minute. I think Ms. Riedel can promote you to a panelist. And I'll continue to talk here while that's happening. So, so let's change that then, barring any objections. Does anyone have an objection to doing 8B before 8A? All right, seeing none, then without objection, we'll do 8B first and then 8A. Welcome, Director Farmer. Can't hear you yet.
Yeah, my apologies for being late. It was an exciting last 15 minutes trying to get to the meeting even before it started. So thank you for indulging me in being late. My apologies.
No apologies needed. I've been there. It can be quite panicky. Just get to the end and you can't get in. It's happened to me before too. So welcome though. Now we're all here. The whole family is here. So very good. We're now ready then for our item 3, the public safety, and let us commence first with the Sheriff's Department's report. So I think that's, yes, Commander McDonald, welcome.
Good afternoon, members of the board, members of the public. For the month of July, in the community of Cambria, we had 3 assault and battery reports. Two of those batteries were reported in the area of Highway 1 and Cambria Drive. You might recognize that as the area where there's a homeless camp. And so those two minor battery instances were reported out of that location. And then there was a road rage argument near the corner of Ardith and Tipton. That actually was not an assault or battery, but it was a verbal argument concerning a driving issue. There were 25 disturbances in July. We did have one report of a burglary in the 5600 block of Moonstone Beach Drive. However, that was not founded. That was a circumstance where there was a miscommunication between house cleaners, and a cleaner went to that location to clean, but it was the wrong house, and so it was not a burglary in progress. It was just an unscheduled cleaning. We had 3 thefts reported. One was unfounded. The other 2, one was theft of tools from the 1900 block of Stewart Street, and the other was a theft of jewelry in the 900 block of Main Street. We had 3 vandalisms. One was vandalism to a vehicle in the 1500 block of Pierce. There was graffiti reported to the trash can at Lambton Park. And then there were some ripped up plants in a yard in the 900 block of Hartford Street. We had 10 suspicious circumstances calls that included 4 suspicious vehicles, 3 suspicious subjects, and 3 suspicious circumstances. None of those resulted in any reports being taken, so they were resolved without need for documentation. In the month of July, there were 17 enforcement stops. All of those stops were vehicle stops, and there were 13 preventative patrol activities. 2 of those were foot patrols, 5 were patrol checks, and 6 of those were on-site activities where deputies observe circumstance that needs to be checked, and they stop and do that checking. That concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Commander McDonald. Let's start with the board. Do any board members have any questions or observations for Commander McDonald? Yes, Director Farmer, please.
Yes, I want to ask Director McDonald, Commander McDonald, about the incident at 1500 Pierce. I don't know if you can, give any further details, but there's been an individual in this neighborhood where I live, and I just live a couple of blocks from Pierce, that has been going around in the middle of the night and spitting on vehicles and just kind of being a very irresponsible person. I'm wondering if this situation might have had to do with that individual. Do we have any idea?
It is related to that, and we do have an ongoing investigation and effort. We're well aware of that situation that's impacting many neighbors in that area, and so we're in the final processes of putting together something to hopefully curtail that behavior.
Cool. Thanks for confirming that, I guess. Thanks for confirming it was that individual. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments for Commander McDonald from the board? All right. Seeing none, I'll go to the public. So folks out there, all 8 of you, do any of you have a comment or question for Commander McDonald? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Riedel, do we have any written commentary for this item?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Commander McDonald. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This community seems very quiet, but it seems like under the surface there It's a little more excitement than I ever think about. So anyway, moving on. Thank you. So now let's go to the fire department here, and that will be our acting fire chief, Berkey.
Good afternoon, members of the board and members of the public.
Welcome.
So yeah, to start it off, it's basically business as usual up at the fire department right now, as far as the continued meetings that we've had going on, the meetings and affiliations. Like I said, pretty much the same as last month. There's not really a whole lot of changes. The station continues to be closed due to the pandemic, and so it's closed to the public. All public events, prevention activities, and education tours are all canceled. That continues. Like I said, nothing really kind of shocking or drastic on that level there. As far as our total monthly responses, we had 107. So this ends up being our busiest month so far this year. We did have quite a bit of activity in the water lately, just due to the tourism and the increased weather that we've been having. So people are just coming over to the coast more and more. So but so just to kind of go down the list here, we didn't have any fires, thank God, in the month of July. So but we did have 69 search and rescue EMS calls, and then continuing down service calls, we had 16. Hazardous conditions, we had 2, and then we had a lot of public service assists as usual. And like I said, smoke detectors, assisting the elderly, falls and lift assist type things. So I did want to take a second and on one of our ocean rescue calls on July 22nd, I wanted to take a minute and recognize one of our citizens. We actually responded to a girl that was in distress. She was about 50 yards off the coast in the surf, and she couldn't come back in. So when we showed up, we deployed our rescue swimmer, but there was already one of the citizens in the water with her, assisting her. And if it wasn't for him, that she probably wouldn't have made it out of the water as well as she did. So I just wanted to recognize him. His name is Mike Stilson. And he's a ex-firefighter. Apparently he's a retired firefighter from LA County, and just wanted to take the second to recognize him for his above and beyond duties as a citizen. So this is the least I could do. I wish I could do more for him, because he definitely helped us out that day, and it was really awesome to see him and see our citizens kind of come together and help us out like that. So she did well. She got out of the water super fine, obviously super scared, but she's doing well, and it's in part because of him. So just wanted to take that second to recognize him. That's pretty much it for my report. There's not a whole lot more on here. Like I said, business as usual. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Captain Berkey. So let us start with the board first. Does anyone from the board have a question or an observation for Captain Berkey? Okay, seeing none. I just want to piggyback on your thanks to let me also publicly then thank Mike Stilson for his bravery and willingness to get out there in that cold water. That's really something. Nice to know that we have such people. Let me go to I see we do have some folks out there in the audience that have a question or observation for you, Chief Berkey. So let us go to Elizabeth Bettenhausen, please. Oh, wait, stop. I've got 2 board members first, so let me do them, and then we'll come to Ms. Bettenhausen. So Vice President Dean, followed by Director Steidel.
I just wanted to add on to my thanks for Mike Stilson. He is one of my neighbors, and he's a very avid surfer as well. And I will make a point of thanking him personally as well when he walks past my house every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and Director Steidel.
I was going to ask Captain Berkey if he had the contact information for Mr. Stilson, but as he's a neighbor of Vice President Dean's, she obviously would have that available to us. And I'd like to suggest that we send a note of thanks from the board in appreciation of his efforts as a community member and representing the community in that way.
Thank you, Director Stidel. I'll communicate with Vice President Dean and get his contact information and send him out a note on all of our behalf.
Thank you.
I do have that available if you guys need it as well.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, now we're ready for Ms. Bettenhausen. Welcome, Dr. Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I sent earlier to the department, the fire department, a huge thank you, and I won't read it all to you right now, but I'd like to read the a part of the last paragraph. On August 3rd, the acting chief Berkey and engineer Castellanos and safer firefighter Elgin and reserve firefighter Loudermilk came to check on my heart at my place, for which I am immensely grateful to these gentlemen. It's not the first time they've dropped by for this, and so I really want to thank them heartily. And I read this last paragraph to the fire department. Please accept my high commendation of these people and the whole department for wholly qualified and compassionate service. I think they understand we humans are complicated creatures with emotions as well as minds, with bodies as important as any beliefs or ignorance, and the interconnection among them all. Fire chief here, fire department here in Cambria includes attention to, quote, exothermic oxidation of a combustible substance, end quote, as well as much more. So I am just so grateful for these people who are human beings par excellence. They understand public service to the tune of at least 99.9%. And I hope they never have to come and save my life literally, but they've come, they've come very close. So I thank them all immensely, as well as the healthcare district and CAL FIRE when they drop by too. These are wonderful public servants that we have in Cambria. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. And again, I would like to second your statement. The knowledge that those folks are out there ready to help us is really reassuring. And my thanks to them for keeping you with us. We're glad you're still here. Okay, any other folks out there in the audience? Okay. Leah, do we have any written comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We are now ready to come to the public comment section of the, Director Farmer.
Yeah, I'm going to make two remarks real quickly. Captain Berkey, during the course of his announcing, all the things that had taken place this past month, he mentioned lift assist. And I had minor outpatient operation, I guess I'd call it minor, outpatient operation about 5 years ago. And lift assist means like, let's say you can't walk. And so they put me in a wheelchair and brought me up the stepping stones, which is quite a journey in and of itself, up to my place. And it really made a huge difference coming back from the hospital. So I just want to encourage people, if need be, to take advantage of that. And because it really meant a lot.
Thank you, Director Farmer. And again, it does behoove us to remember that we do have this wonderful resource and to remember to use it when we need it. Very important.
And there's one other announcement I want to make, if you don't mind, very brief. And this goes back to board communication. Of course, I got in just as that was ending. For those of us, and I think most of us here might remember this, maybe not. Now that I think about our general manager, just would have been 1 year old when this happened. But tomorrow in 1962 was the first time that the Beatles performed with Ringo Starr as their drummer. And that was at the Cavern nightclub in Liverpool, England. So I just felt that was worth acknowledging for considering the history that the Beatles have had in our lives. And Ringo being one of the two remaining members that is still with us. and he's as lively as they get. He just turned 80 years old. So, no, actually 81. So there we are. I just thought I'd throw that out there to add a little bit of put a smile on our face for just a moment, a brief moment. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Director Farmer. And you remind me that I did skip over the board member communications section. So just backtracking briefly, any other board members have a brief communication or anything they'd like to just say to their fellow board members or the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll move then back to the public comment section here. So this is item 4 on the agenda. So folks out there, this is your opportunity to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda. And I'll let you all know who's here, as I usually do. There are presently 11 of you out there watching, and I'll read the names of those who have first and last names displayed. We have Daryl Robinson, Tina Dickinson, Alan Dean, Crosby and Laura Swartz, Deborah Scott, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, Hank Kruzak from San Simeon, Jim Green, Melissa Bland, Michael Thomas. So thank you all for coming. Welcome. And I see first let's have Mr. Robinson, followed by Ms. Dickinson.
Good afternoon. Thanks for recognizing me.
Welcome.
Our Unlock group submitted our engineers review of the CCSD's adopted Urban Water Master Plan back in March, and it's never been officially acknowledged. So I just wanted to take a minute today and read the report's conclusion for everybody paying attention. I'm going to read now from the report titled 2020 Urban Water Master Plan Review and Analysis by GEI Consultants, dated February 25th, 2022. Conclusion: it is apparent that, as with many other municipalities in California, Cambria is adapting to new realities with respect to residential and commercial water use by making water conservation a way of life. With these realities while these realities restrict the quantity of water individual households may consume, they also expand the number of households a water purveyor can reliably serve. Thus, the moratorium on water connections opposed by the CCSD in 2001 is a measure representative of a past era in water management, which no longer reflects current and anticipated practices, attitudes, and regulations. The analyses presented in this report indicate that today, based on residential water use projections for 2025, there is a basis for permitting 184 additional water meter connections without compromising system reliability for existing users during multiple year droughts. Based on water use rates reported by the CCSD to the State Board for 2021, rates already lower than the projections used to support permitting of 184 additional connections, the number of meters that could be permitted under the same conditions rise to 208. Further, residential standards expected to be introduced in the coming years are likely to make it possible for most of the water meter applications on the district's wait list to be approved without reliance on water provided by the WRF, a condition that will be strengthened when revised state or local standards for residential landscaping, such as a requirement for xeriscaping, are introduced. Finally, although water from the WRF is not needed to justify approval of existing permit applications, WRF water will be available in the future to bolster the CCSD's primary purpose of providing reliable water service. And that's the end of the report. Back to Unlock, we understand that CCSD is being threatened by the Coastal Commission for recently agreeing to serve water to customers that already had longstanding water commitments. We would like to work with the district to rebut the commission's position on these matters. We think our report illustrates why not only was the district's position correct in agreeing to serve those recent applicants, but why it also has the capacity today to start serving applicants on the wait list, and that can all be done without taking any water service reliability away from existing customers and without further endangering the creeks. That's my comments for today. Thank you all for recognizing me.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Now let us go with Tina Dickinson, please.
Thank you, President Howell. Good afternoon.
Welcome.
On a light note, to follow up with from Director Farmer's comment, I actually was one of the many, well, thousands of folks back in 1965 who was at the last concert of the Beatles at Candlestick Park. And later, years later, as a music teacher, I taught a course on the history of rock and roll from the very beginnings back in the late 19th century or mid to the Beatles. And so the Beatles, yeah, they were great, loved them, blah, blah, blah. But now on to something else. At a recent meeting, fairly recent, I asked a question, and that was, could I please be provided with the names of those participating in the interviewing process for candidates for a new fire chief. And I was told at that meeting, no, I couldn't get that information. So I put in a public records request and I did receive it. And I have the names. There are 3 fire chiefs, one from San Luis, one from Atascadero, one from Paso. There is a member of the IAFF, Haley Dodson, Pam Duffield, Mr. Weigold from staff, and then and David Pearson, a member of the public. And then there are 2 board members, which kind of concern me because I'm sort of going through this strategic goal of improving communication with the public kind of thing, but also the district's bylaws. So if you go to the bylaws page on page 6, it says, the primary responsibilities of the board of directors are 2. I'm going to skip over the first 2 because they don't pertain, but C and D, appointment, oversight, and evaluation of a general manager, and D, appointment, oversight, and evaluation of a district council. There's nothing there that says oversight and evaluation of a fire chief. And further down, it says under 7.2, individual board members should not involve themselves in the day-to-day operations of the district. Their primary role is to participate in the process of establishing the district's policies and goals. The general manager is responsible for implementing those policies and goals. And 7.3, personnel matters and other operational issues that may be of concern to individual board members should be addressed through the general manager. So I am curious as to why 2 board members are on this panel that I wasn't even allowed to get that information during a meeting. So please, if we're gonna have bylaws and we have revisions of bylaws, abide by the bylaws. Or if there's a way you can get around it, at least inform the public so that when they ask, at a meeting, why is it so hidden again? Again, we have this issue of transparency and your attempts to improve communication with the public. I don't see it. Secondly, do I have a few seconds?
You have about 7 seconds.
I urge everyone to protest the trash increases. There's a form on Nextdoor. I sent it to others. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, I think Ms. Dickinson does raise one point that probably I would like to have district council respond to. It's my interpretation that it was not out of order for having board members participate in the interviews for fire chief, but I'd like to hear Mr. Carmel's view on this.
I agree with you. First of all, I don't think having those 2 board members on the panel violated any of those bylaws. And there's discretion to appoint members of the board to those type of panels. It's done pretty commonly, so I don't have much concern with it. I mean, it's nice that she's reading the bylaws very carefully, but I'm not sure I'd consider any of those bylaws having been violated.
Thank you, Mr. Carmel. But yes, and now I will let me piggyback on Mr. Carmel's comment. Yes, we do appreciate that the kind of detailed attention that our members of the public, such as Ms. Dickinson, do pay to our operations. We do appreciate it. So it's important that I just want to acknowledge that. I see no further public comment. Ms. Riedel, do we have any public comment from, any written public comment for general public comment?
Not for general public comment.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move forward. Oh, we're ready for the manager's report. So let us commence. Let me see. I think I will take public comment before each report, because I'm going to presume that everybody has read the reports that are in the packet. So if you give your comments before the report, it will give the manager or the finance manager or Mr. Dienzo, the utilities manager, an opportunity should they choose to answer any of your questions. So members of the public first, I'm taking comment on the general manager's report only. Do anybody in the public wish to comment on the general manager's report or has a question for the general manager? Okay, going once, going twice. As for written public comment, I think I will take that at the end of the whole operation. Okay, I do see Ms. Dickerson does have a comment. So please bring in Ms. Dickerson.
Thank you, President Howell. This may be out of line. I was going to ask if the general manager or if the board the board is still considering the position of assistant general manager, but I don't believe that's on the agenda for him today. Is that correct? So maybe that's premature or not
Okay.
part of this, right?
Well, it's his choice. I don't know where he is on that, but if
Well, I'd like to know.
well, I'm sure we all would, but it's his choice as to whether he wishes to answer you in this particular context.
Okay.
But thank you for your question. It's a legitimate question. Anybody else have questions for the general manager? Okay, seeing none. I do see Ms. Riedel, your square just lit up. Do you have something?
I'm sorry. No, I don't.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so GM Weigold, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Howell. In addition to my written report, I have just two additional items. One, the district hosted Congressman Jimmy Panetta on Tuesday, the 16th this week. He was making some trips and meetings down here in our area because effective January 1st, his office will represent Cambria in addition to some areas, I think, in Paso Robles. So he met with a group of us at the wastewater plant. We were able to review the district organization, ongoing work, the projects we're currently working on and having the planning stages, as well as discuss district issues with him. The second note is regarding the PG&E project. As the board knows, we had to delay that due to some issues with PG&E. Some late breaking news is that while we had to postpone this, it looks like we are going to be able to hold a special meeting subject to the board by the end of the month to consider both the scope of work, the work order from PG&E, and the financing package. And that, pending your questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, GM Weigold. So board members, do you have anything for GM Weigold? Any questions? So I do see Daryl Robinson. Oh, go ahead, Director Farmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask General Manager Weigold. There was just the second round of interviews with the fire chief candidates 2 days ago, this past Tuesday. I'm just wondering how much closer are we to having a decision made in that regard?
GM Weigold, if you'd like to answer that.
Well, having worked on executive searches for over 20 years, it's hard always to select a date or talk about how it's going, because until the individual is in the seat, you never really know where you stand. But I feel pretty comfortable that as a result of the finalists we interviewed this week, we've narrowed the field down a little bit, and we'll continue on to another round, and we have some due diligence to do, but I think we're getting closer to a candidate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim Weigold. Any other board member? Okay, now I see I do have public comment, Mr. Robinson. Now, I did call for comment on this item before the report. In this case, however, I'll go ahead and take your comment now. If it's a question for the GM and he feels it appropriate to answer it at this time, I'll allow that. But if there's more extended discussion, that will have to go on between the two of you outside of this meeting. So yes, please bring in Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer something because I did not know that Jimmy Panetta was going to become your representative. Because I'm involved in the industry, I happen to know that he's one of the leaders in Congress in getting federal funding and promoting the installation of microgrids. And in case he didn't mention that when he met with you, I think he'd be a good ally in getting something like that done with federal funding. And I think Cambria would be a great candidate to put in its own microgrid, both for reasons of resiliency because of the risk of PG&E power going down, and also for long-term cost savings and sustainability.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a good piece of information. Okay, let's see. I think Jim Weigel, do you wish to say anything, or shall we move forward?
I have nothing to add, President Howell.
Thank you. But that's a good piece of information to keep in our back pocket on that. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Moving now to the, keep track of myself here, sorry. We are now ready for the finance manager. Oh, do we have the facilities, I believe, don't we, Jim Weigel? From Mr. Mendoza, yes?
That's correct.
All right, okay. So Mr. Mendoza, this is your floor now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, President Howell. Board members, appreciate the opportunity to provide a report for the Facilities and Resources Department for activities during the month of July. I'll try to keep my report short since I see you have a lot of items on the agenda, so I'll just highlight 2 items on my report. One of the items is trails. The Facilities and Resources staff has been working throughout the month of July on trails. This is the time of the year where our trail system starts to get a little overgrown. Some of the trees get top heavy, they fall on trails. So we were able to do some work, and at some points we utilized a local contractor to help us, and we were able to clear trails on Windsor Boulevard, Highway 1, Moonstone Beach, and also the Fiscalini Ranch. So if anybody wants to come out, our trail system is looking good, and it's a great time of the year to come out and enjoy. The other item I just wanted to highlight is something that is a really positive thing in our department. It actually is a huge part of what we do, and that is volunteers. A lot of times volunteers don't get enough credit, but we have a great group of volunteers that we work with that help us, not just in the Fiscalini Ranch, but also our parks and even our trash recycle planters along Main Street. Just to give you a little idea of how much work our volunteers do. So in the first 6 months of the year, volunteers in the Fiscalini Ranch put enough hours to equal 2 full-time employees. So there's a lot of work being put out there by volunteers all over town. There's also a lot of communication that goes on with our volunteer leaders, the executive director, myself, to make sure that we are utilizing volunteers in the best way and in the most effective areas, and so that we're not duplicating efforts as well. And if I could, I just wanted to share one picture that actually sort of shares or tells the volunteer spirit that we have in our department. And hopefully, hopefully you can see that picture there.
I love it.
So I didn't take this picture. This is a picture that was taken by one of our volunteer leaders, Michael Thomas, who I see is in attendance. He is one of our leaders for invasive plant removal. And the reason why this is one of my favorite pictures, a couple of reasons, and I'll give you a little bit of a history on it. So a call went out for volunteers to come out and do some clearing underneath the boardwalk on the bluff trail from weeds coming through. Nothing glamorous about the work. Volunteers are on knees working hard. But a couple of things to highlight about the picture. One is the turnout. So when we have calls for volunteers, we usually have great turnout. We have, in this instance, anywhere between 15 and 20 volunteers that came out to do this work. We have volunteers from young to old that are coming out to do the work. The other thing to highlight is some of the volunteers had already done this work in the past. So when they came back to do the work, some of them had fabricated their own tools to be more effective in doing the work. And I think just the best thing about the picture is the smile on people's faces that you see. People are having a good time. People are enjoying being out there. There's good company, good place to do volunteer work. And at the end of the day, people come out with a sense of accomplishment and feeling good about the work that they did. So as part of my report, I've included a list of places where people can volunteer. If anybody in the community wants to volunteer, there's volunteer opportunities and also contact information if you want. If you have any questions about how or where to volunteer, all that information is on my report.
Excellent.
And I'll stop sharing. I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Yeah, that picture is great. It makes me smile. I really like to see that. Yes, we didn't give the public opportunity to address you now, before, so let me open it to public comment now. So commentary from the public for Mr. Mendoza. I see Michael Thomas. So please bring Mr. Thomas in.
Well, thanks, Carlos, for the kudos, and kudos to you and all your staff. And I just want to say those are the kind of days that make Cambria the true happiest place on the planet.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I heartily agree. Anybody else wish to express anything to Mr. Mendoza? Okay. How about anybody from the board? Or we're all covered here? Oh, good. So thank you, Mr. Mendoza, very much. And it's just wonderful the work that you're doing out there. Thank you again. Okay, moving on to the utilities report. Finance manager's report is next, sorry. So Ms. Duffield, or is it Ms. Fritz? Who's going to give the report today? Okay, Ms. Duffield.
Good afternoon, President Howell and members of the board. The finance manager's report is for the month of July 2022. I don't have anything to add other than what's written, so I'll keep the facilities and resource manager, Mr. Mendoza, I'll keep my report short and just answer any questions that you may have.
All right, well, let's go immediately to the questions then. So first of all, folks in the board, my fellow directors, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Duffield? All right, seeing none, let us go to the attendees. I seem to have lost my display here. Here we are. So do we have any commentary, questions from the public? This is regarding Ms. Duffield's finance manager's report. Okay, seeing none. Leah, Ms. Riedel, do we have any written comment on the finance manager's report?
No, there is none.
Thank you, Ms. Riedel. Okay, so moving then, thank you very much, Ms. Duffield. Let us then move on to the utilities report. So this will be Mr. D'Enzo. You have the floor. Oh wait, I think let me go to public comment first to see if anybody has any questions for you. I'm now going to the public prior to the utilities report. I see a couple of you out there, 3, good. So we'll start with Crosby and Laura Swartz.
Good afternoon, President Howell, members of the board and staff present. I just have an observation about one of the items on the engineering list of projects, things to do. This is on page 24 of the agenda package. Its title is the St. Simeon Wellfield Transmission Main Project. That developing a permanent repair of the St. Simeon water main. This project will also include solutions for the sewer effluent main that runs parallel. And at first glance, this seems like this is just routine stuff, but as our utilities manager pointed out, this effluent main is the same type of construction and the same installed at the same time as the water main that just failed. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that there could be a failure of this sewer effluent main as well. And that would be a lot more of a problem than the water main failure, because we don't have an obvious backup for that. So I just want to say this should probably be bumped up to a higher priority. And there would probably be a good idea also to have some kind of a emergency backup plan in case this effluent line was to fail somewhere in the same area that the water main failed. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Swartz. Okay, we have now Ms. Dickinson, followed by Ms. Bettenhausen, followed by Hank K. San-Simeon.
Thank you, President Howell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Yes, in the report on page 23, I noticed that Mr. D'Anzo or whoever prepared this project coastal development permit status ongoing, staff met with SLO County Planning in June and received verbal approval for a time extension to respond in full to the information hold request. I've never heard of a verbal extension. So can Mr. D'Anzo please explain who he received it from and for how long? It's just kind of, I've never seen that before. Secondly, I would like to ask him on page 24, in-stream flow study task 1. I see nothing about a resumption of the TAC force group, the TAC team. When they haven't met since January, February. So what the heck is going on with that? I don't understand it. There's not been a word, and it just says that ongoing consultant team has completed its field service. So I'm assuming that pretty soon Stillwater Sciences will have a report. When? And when is SR4 expected to be resumed for operation? Thank you.
Okay, we are now going with Ms. Bettenhausen, followed by Hank K. San-Simeon. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I have a question on page 26, please. Other questions I'll just address directly to Mr. D'Anzo by email. But my question regarding page 26, I'm a little unsure, what are the criteria involved in number 1 in will serve for remodels, active service transfers and grandfather, et cetera. What are the criteria used to evaluate the water situation when, for example, on the bed and bath addition is made? How do you decide what the water situation is on such a remodel, and what effect does it have on the will serve? It could also do that with the renovation, bath addition, et cetera. So please direct me to the part on the website where it gives the criteria by which the evaluation of the water supply for particular will serves is available, are available, pardon me. And then the second and only other question is for vacation rental will serves. I would, again, I should probably have checked the website, although I don't recall ever seeing it. What does a will serve for a vacation rental entail in terms of the criteria for water usage and wastewater? In particular, is there an EDU allocation changed when a single family residence goes to a vacation rental standing? And I don't recall seeing that anywhere, but I assume that I'm just missing something. So if Mr. D'Anzo would point out those links, I would be a very grateful ratepayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Okay, now this will be Hank Krusiak coming in. Greetings, Hank.
Hello, President Don Howell,
How are you?
directors. And I noticed Tim Carmel I haven't seen in a while. I don't know if he's getting grayer than I am faster or what, but had a question for Ray. That construction work under Highway 1, which appears to be putting in another wastewater line, potentially for Dow and hopefully for others. If you could just, if it would be allowable to answer a couple brief questions about that. The size of the line, who paid, how much. It appeared to take quite a bit of time. Of course, later on will be the discussion about the regional water solution alternative. It would have been nice to make sure that there was a size or a parallel pipe put in there for future requirements, of course, but a little hindsight now. However, if you could just provide a few brief comments there, Ray, on those questions about the size and who paid how much roughly, would be appreciated if allowed, President Howell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Krusiak. Okay, that's, I think, any further public comment here before we go back to Mr. Dienzo? Okay, Ms. Riedel, do we have any written comment regarding the utility manager's report?
No, we do not.
Thank you, Ms. Riedel. Okay, Mr. Dienzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, President Howell. So if Dr. Bettenhausen doesn't mind, I'll just send her an email directly relating to the vacation rental questions that she had, relating to the questions about the full interior renovation. We follow our renovations and additions in our code. There's a very specific policy that we follow relating to the remodels and will serves relating to that. So and you know, if interested, I could point people out to that too. And as far as this is kind of getting to be a common question about the work on Highway 1 crossing. This question was also asked at the RNI meeting. It is a Dow project, and I know that the project started back in, at least when I picked up on it, it was in 2020 when conversations started again with Dow in light of connecting to the district sewer. Those conversations started in 2020, and then it was put on hold. And I'm going to guess it's because of COVID. Like a lot of projects were put on hold during that time. But at the same time, they needed, Dow needed to build their own force main that was on their cost, and they needed to get the easement from Caltrans to do all of that. So up to that, you know, the point where it intersects with district project hasn't come yet. We have talked about them connecting to the sewer. We have talked about the application process, but an actual application has not been formally submitted to us for review. But we have talked about it. We've talked to their engineer about it. So there is an understanding about the project. So we're not surprised about the connection, where it's going to connect, and the size that it was going to be. Regarding that question, you know, 4 inches was the size we were talking about. I don't know what they finally decided on, so I can't really answer to that. But also understand that the connection of this project officially to the sewer will be brought before your board here. So so please understand that. So hopefully those answer. And you know, yeah, in light of Mr. Cosby's question about the effluent line, yes, logically, yes. That's why we're pursuing a parallel project. And in light of the in-stream flow study task 1, the TAC reviewed all of the process leading up to the draft report. and in light of the field work that was going to be done, they weighed in on all of that. So the project went forward based on all those considering all those recommendations. And the TAC will be involved again with the in-stream flow task 1 when the draft report is done. And I anticipate that draft report will be ready in the next month, probably next month. So hopefully that answers some of those questions. So again, I do want to highlight some actions of the utilities report. Highlights during the month of July. There's a lot here, but I want to highlight a few things. First of all, I want to highlight that the generator at the plant failed only because it's old. And one of the alternators actually gave up. But the good news about it is that our operators were able to respond quickly, and we had San Luis Powerhouse able to respond quickly to be able to bypass the alternator. That was the problem, and it was there was a fix for it. The actual alternator is not available anymore because it's a 1976 generator, but it's a good thing that that project will be in the list of projects that will be done here in the PG&E SST list of projects. The other thing that I wanted to highlight about that is that with the foresight and knowledge of our operators here of building a bypass for our the pump influent, and the bypass worked because of that, no spill occurred in the plant as a result of that foresight. So I just wanted to highlight that. That was a specifically good thing to highlight. The other thing another thing I want to highlight, a couple of things in the water department. We did have our first main break of the year. I'm not counting actually in 2022, yeah. Regarding other than the San Simeon, another main break happened. It was right near Windsor and Lancaster. It was a 6-inch main break. I wanted the fact that the main had a leak was not the issue, but the fact that I wanted to give kudos to Andy Lyman, who was the operator on call during that time. It's never easy to, when you're that on-call duty operator, will a catastrophe happen under your watch? But again, I give kudos to him because he was able to respond and call in backup as needed, and the issue was mitigated well. And I also wanted to highlight that we did, as part of our work, we did our annual production meter testing during the month of July. This is where we test all of our meters for our production wells. And I bring this up because something that I've said before your board, and specifically something that I've been pushing since I've been here, and something that all of our operators here are following as a team, doing good work, is that we want to follow best industry practices. And I wanted to highlight that because this best industry practices is not the same thing as following regulations. Following regulations is the minimum that any industry should do. But best industry, this is part of best industry practices of being sure that all the production meters are calibrated correctly, and that we're not losing water, and because if someone were to say, well, was this a requirement by regulations? Well, no, it wasn't, but it is a good industry practice. So I wanted to highlight that, and we were able to do that this month. As far as the questions about the Santa Rosa well 4, we still haven't gotten to parts for that. So that repair didn't take place in July. We're hoping that the parts will come in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully if it's done here in August, I will be giving that report next month. The good news is that the SR3, the Santa Rosa Well 3, is humming along just fine. So everything is going good with that. A couple of last things. I want to highlight Megan Gersony. She completed her training and became certified and passed the test to be a qualified water efficient landscaper. So this is a very, very important certification for our team because as far as, doing inspections for irrigation relating to water conservation is very important. And we now have another, Melissa is also one qualified water efficiency landscaper, and now Megan Garcia. So kudos to her for that. And as far as our water conditions, I will be giving a report on that when we talk about the stage 3 water situation. So, but that concludes this report for now. But if you have any questions, I'm available.
Okay, thank you, Mr. D'Enzo. So questions from the board, questions or comments for Mr. D'Enzo? Okay, nobody has any questions? Oh, yes, Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Howell. Yeah, I just want to ask Ray some clarification on a couple of things, well, maybe more than a couple. So first, Ray, with regard to, by the way, I do want to, I think I speak for the entire board, but I want to commend the staff for assertively and very confidently and professionally dealing with the problem with the generator and how quickly it was on call, I think, on the weekend, and everybody that was needed to be there got there as quickly as possible. It says a lot about our excellent staff and the people that assisted them. So what I wanted to ask you, Ray, I'm noticing here on page 21, finding lots of grease in the collection system, and we'll be increasing efforts to control fats, oils, and grease. Should I assume that this is due to an increase, let's say, folks coming to town and eating at the restaurants, and therefore this is taking place?
Mr. D'Enzo?
Yes, I have no doubt, Director Farmer, that contributes to that. There's a section in close to near Main Street that we call Grease Alley. So, so yeah, it's definitely due to the restaurant commercial activity.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else for Mr. D'Enzo? Mr. Farmer, Director Farmer, did you have another question?
Yeah, I think I mentioned I did. Yes, thank you, President Howell. So Ray, I wanted to ask you, it was 2 years ago, August 15th of 2020, when we submitted the coastal development permit for the WRF. So as is noted here at the bottom of page 23, and I think Ms. Dickinson mentioned this, received a verbal approval for a time extension. So I'm just curious, for how long was that verbal approval given?
Okay. Mr. D'Enzo, go ahead.
Yes, Director Farmer, that is the way the conversation went is that the county planning did not want to extend it several more times. So they just wanted to do an extension one more time. So we told them just frankly what we were up against, that there were some things that we couldn't control, namely with the Section 7 Endangered Species Act work. Sure, we can control the schedule as far as our submittals, but we couldn't control how the Army Corps and Fish and Wildlife was going to respond relating to the review. So we just told them all that very, very plainly, and so they understood. So they left it open-ended. So so that's why that was the verbal part of it, which I am now relaying to you. So so yeah, there was no written deadline, but we did tell them what we were up against, and for now that suffices. So
okay, all right. So two more, if you don't mind. Notice on page 24, right down near the bottom, regarding the EV charging station, So it says that, that project has been complete. Could you just give us a quick synopsis of the change that took place to, let's say, satisfy the concerns that the folks from the Legion had?
Okay, Mr. Dienzo?
I don't have I don't have an answer to this yet because I don't have an answer to that because right now there isn't we haven't moved forward on project modifications yet. So it's definitely, and plus the other thing too that we need to bring before your board is to establish a schedule of fees relating to the charging of how much to charge there. So until those things were to happen, this is also something that I would be working with the general manager on, and I know that that a committee would probably be formed to decide where a relocation point would be if we were to move forward with that. So.
I realize now that I kind of misread that. I thought that when it said complete, I thought that meant, well, the changes that needed to take place were complete. And now, obviously, I misinterpreted what was said there. So my apologies.
Excuse me, please wait for me to recognize you before you start. Again, it's not a back and forth. So now please go ahead, but please remember to be recognized before you speak.
Okay. Can you recognize me now?
Yes. Yes, I recognize you very well.
Thank you. So just one more question, Ray. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. I'm just getting, clarification on issues that I and other people might be concerned about. So on page 25 regarding the Stewart Street tank project. So it says here, rebuild the Stewart Street tanks, which is different from replacing. And so I'm just curious because, and I discussed this with the general manager at our boardwalk meeting earlier today. I remember back in 2017, April of 2017, when Mr. William Bellis, who's been the person that comes in and examines the water tanks every year, swims around in them, he does whatever repairs need to take place. And he had mentioned at that time that the smaller of the two tanks needed to be totally replaced, and that the larger one wasn't that far behind. But now I see that 5 years later, they're not being replaced; they're just being rebuilt. And I sense that those are two different things. So especially, well, it says here, have reached their useful operation life. And this refers to both tanks on Stewart Street. So what are we going to do to rebuild them when it appeared 5 years ago, the person that we really relied on said they need to be replaced, not just rebuilt? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know.
Before you answer, Mr. Dienzo, answer only as much as you feel comfortable about, because this is beginning to stray a little bit this is not an area where we're going to argue points. So just answer whatever you feel comfortable with.
Oh no, I feel comfortable answering this. So please understand that this is a table, and I guess a good way to say would be a complete remodel / rebuild. And it's different the way we're saying it like that because that's really the descriptor of it. A new construction situation would mean that we would need to change the foundation, do a soils report, and then size it based on the new foundation. I mean the new tank. What we're proposing to do here is it's essentially a rebuild / remodel, because what we're going to do is we're still going to keep the same foundation, and the materials are going to be the same. the type of tank is going to be the same as well, meaning it's going to be a bolted steel tank with new coatings. The technology of coatings is such that it's going to be comparable to the lifespan of a welded steel. So so all of that, understood, and plus going the rebuild remodel route is also going to save us like 3 times the cost. So that was also a good portion of this. So, and the other thing too is as far as replacement, rebuild, remodel, these mean the same thing to me. But yeah, if I can reword this to make it more descriptive, I'll do that. But that's really what we're trying to do here with the Stewart Street tank.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Director Farmer, do you have any more questions?
No, but I want to thank Ray for putting up with me and answering my questions. So thank you so much. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Director Farmer. The questions are good questions, not to say that they're something I'm sure many people are interested in. Okay, any additional commentary, questions from the board? We've already been to the public. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. So we're now finished. That is the last of the reports. Thank you very much, Mr. Dienzo. Okay, we are now ready for the consent agenda. So let me start out by, does any director wish to pull any item? Now, this is if you actually want to have a debate. If you just want to register a no vote, we can do that without pulling the item. Director Gray.
This may not be pulling an item, but there are a couple of corrections, minor corrections in the minutes.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Then we probably should pull that one.
Okay. It just matters. It's a name spelt. A name is misspelt. That's all.
Oh. Okay, I'm going to rule that doesn't need to be pulled then, if that's really the case. Could you?
On page, yeah, I'll tell you. This is the minutes for the July 14th meeting on the agenda page 50 and agenda page 51. Deborah Scott. Her name is it should be Debra. Deborah Doborah. It's at the bottom of page 50 and on the top of page 51. I think that's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Ms. Vidal, you got those changes, okay?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, other than any minor changes to the minutes.
Oh, I saw it, yeah.
Okay, no, that was good. So does anybody want to actually pull something for debate? All right, seeing none. Does anybody wish to register a no vote on any of these items? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve A through F of the consent agenda. Director Steidel.
I move that we approve consent agenda items 6A through F inclusive with a minor spelling correction.
Good.
Embedded to the July 14th meeting minutes.
Excellent.
I second.
Moved by Director Steidel, seconded by Director Gray to approve items A through F of the consent agenda with the minor change to the minutes as indicated in the previous discussion. Since there is no debate on the consent agenda, I do need to ask for public comment though before we call the roll. So I see Ms. Heinrichs out there. So Ms. Riedel, could you bring Ms. Heinrichs in, please? Welcome, Ms. Heinrichs.
There. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
A little bit at a loss here. I asked the board to consider transitioning to hybrid meetings, allowing meetings in person, appropriately masked, as well as continuing the remote Zoom meeting option. Many groups are making this change. The Vets Hall can be well ventilated. Continuing remote participation as well is the best of both worlds. In any case, please make all attendees visible. There is no rationale for concealing the public from each other at public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. Okay, do we have any other public comment? This is on the consent agenda. Any items on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, then I think we're ready to call the roll. So please, Ms. Riedel.
Okay. Director Stidel,
Aye.
Director Stidel, aye. Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Gray, aye. Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Farmer, aye. Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Vice President Dean, aye. And President Howell,
Aye.
President Howell, aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes to 0. Thank you, everybody. So we're now ready to move to regular business. Okay, let's do 7A, which is to discuss and consider the establishing an ad hoc committee to work with staff to evaluate the San Simeon Coastal Hazard Plan and provide potential input to the Board of Directors. So I believe that will be GM Weigold, I believe. Yes, GM Weigold or Mr. Dienzo to present.
Yes, I'll start, President Howell. As you just mentioned, agenda item 7A, staff is recommending that the Board of Directors discuss and consider establishing an ad hoc committee to work with staff to evaluate the San Simeon Coastal Hazard Response Plan and provide potential input to the board. So the San Simeon Special District, Community Services District is has been directed to build a new wastewater treatment plant. And they've got, I think their deadline is now about 10 years out. They are required to do a coastal hazard response plan as part of their planning effort. Part of that plan requires them to reach out to area organizations, including the likes of our organization, our special district. So these are strategic issues such as should we participate in a regional wastewater treatment plant, for example. So these are issues that staff needs some direction from the board, and recommends that the board set up an ad hoc to facilitate the communication and formulating recommendations.
Okay, thank you, GM Weigold. Mr. Dienzo, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add to that is to remind the board that that San Simeon is the one that's going to take the initiative on this, even though we need to establish an ad hoc in anticipation of participating, but it is San Simeon's project. Just wanted to remind the board.
Thank you for that. And to get clear on that, so we would appoint an ad hoc, but the ad hoc wouldn't do anything until such time as San Simeon communicates with us. Is that what is your understanding?
That would be my understanding.
Okay.
President,
yes, go ahead, Jim Weigel.
President Howell, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that the district comments on the San Simeon plan, and we can make recommendations. That said, San Simeon doesn't have to abide by any of those recommendations.
Okay. Okay, we kind of have two different approaches here. I think maybe the first thing would be for the ad hoc to get together with staff and kind of make kind of a determination as to what to do next, perhaps, but that will be up to the ad hoc. Let me go to the public first and get there, and then let's come back to the board for a discussion and a motion. So we have considerable public comment here. So far, there are 4 folks wishing to speak. We'll start with Hank Krusiak, followed by Christine Heinrichs, then Tina Dickinson, and then Elizabeth Bettenhausen. So yes, please bring Hank Krusiak in. Welcome back.
Thank you, President Howell. I think both the general manager and Ray were correct in what they said. The study is about 3 years behind. The study was to be completed as a condition of the after the fact coastal development permit for our existing treatment plant violations. in 2019. So it was to be completed by July 11th of this year. And I think it's August now. So that deadline was missed. There was one 2-year extension allowed, which was just granted about 10 days ago. So they got the one allowable 2-year extension. And all of this time cuts into that 10-year window. So 3 years of the 10-year window is gone now. And so the study is going to have more urgency because of the 2 Coastal Commission letters that you included in your board package. So the theme from the Coastal Commission was that each of the major alternatives should be completely studied, fully studied, costed out, technology looked at, pros and cons equally, including even restoration of the old site for each one of these. So to the point that you are likely one way or another going to be asked to participate in the study to a sufficient degree to allow that regional Cambria solution to be flushed out completely. I shouldn't have used the term flushed out for the wastewater treatment plant, but a little play on words there. But it is going to be a requirement, and that was in the 4-page letter. So I think to Ray's point, as well as the general managers, timing wise, there's going to be a proposal, I think. In fact, in the 4-page letter from the Coastal Commission, there is effectively a timeline they provided, breaking the project into chunks. And that first portion is to get together with the stakeholders, identifying the stakeholders, which was to have been done, I think, this month. And then subsequently to start meetings with the stakeholders, which of course includes Cambria as a major stakeholder. So I'm very supportive of you forming that ad hoc committee, because I think it is an important alternative for the environment and the communities as well. And lastly, the Coastal Commission is effectively demanding it. But again, they're demanding it through San Simeon, not directly through Cambria. So to General Manager and Ray's comments. So, okay. I did submit 2 written letters that I appreciate being included in written comments. Our district general manager and chairperson do not post comments. So you should appreciate your residents and constituents should appreciate the fact that you do. And you also show your faces in meetings, which they do not do. Our general manager or director show their faces in meetings. So you should just, I know you want hybrid meetings. We just like to see the faces and have our comments posted. So I commend you for doing that. Lastly is that the district had been pushing to shoehorn a package plant into a residential area across from the office on Pico Avenue for those that know our community. And there's already strong resident opposition to doing that. I mean, about 80% of the waste is commercial or tourist serving. And so it's not desirable. There isn't even room for setbacks in that proposed solution. I mean, literally it's adjacent to homes. So this is really not good. So, and I wrote up some alternatives, talked to state parks already and so on. So there's some alternatives out there. But anyway, I want to thank you for hopefully voting to form that ad hoc committee. And it should start becoming active in the October timeframe, I think, based on the Coastal Commission schedule, which the district has not accepted yet formally, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Kruziak. Okay, this will be Christine Heinrichs, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Thank you. This is an interesting item with a lot of potential impact for Cambria's future. You can take a step towards achieving the best possible outcome for Cambria by appointing directors who see the long view to this ad hoc committee. President Howell and Director Farmer. President Howell's tenure on the board is ending, but he is smart and has pursued wastewater treatment alternatives. His concern won't end with his board service. He is a trusted asset who can continue his leadership as a Cambrian. Director Farmer has always been the director most concerned with protecting Cambria's environment for all, the residents, the visitors, and the wildlife. He has lived here more than 20 years and carries legacy knowledge that will be helpful to all the stakeholders. He is the obvious choice for this ad hoc committee. Please form the committee and appoint these two directors to do the best job for the board and Cambria. As Hank said, the Coastal Commission has put forward a very clear timeline for each part of this process in order to get it completed within that 10 years, which is 2029. So there's a certain amount of urgency. This is a big project. It's a major change. And there are certainly things that Cambria should be looking at as this moves forward. Thank you.
And especially like your complimentary remarks about me. So thank you very much for that. Anyways, so let's proceed with, we have Ms. Dickinson, followed by Dr. Bettenhausen.
Yes, thank you, President Howell. I think this is way premature. This item should be brought from the San Simeon Community Services District to the stakeholders, from them. We are not being asked by the Coastal Commission to put in a new wastewater treatment plant. We have more than enough to deal with. This is something that is actually coming from a very backwards to forwards presentation, to have this on our agenda for an ad hoc committee to be formed. I pay attention to San Simeon's district meetings. I go to them, I speak up, I get tons of documents. And to actually have received a letter from Esme Wall from Coastal saying that she sent this letter out but didn't CC at all. So I wrote to her and I said, can you please advise as to who was on, who the stakeholders are? Now, I'd read her previous letter to Mr. Dudek, their consultant, and she said, hi, Tina, thanks. I have not received any responses to the letter of August 5th. The letter was sent to Cambria CSD, County Planning Department, Bruce Gibson in his office, Regional Water Quality Control Board, SLO County Public Works, and State Parks. I mean, why would we be at this juncture jumping in with an ad hoc committee when we don't even know the follow-up from Dudek to San Simeon, which I understand will be coming fairly soon. He will be at another meeting. This is way too premature. Cambria has no business getting in at this point. And I cannot believe this is on the agenda, quite frankly. We do not need this right now. Why don't we get San Simeon to invite the stakeholders, as they should be doing, and then go from there? But it is not our job to be doing this right at this juncture at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Okay, we now have Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Gwen Callas from San Simeon.
Thank you very much, President Howell. My initial noting when I read the agenda was to ask a question. Where is the letter from San Simeon Community Services District inviting the CCSD's participation in this process? There is none. I point out that in the letters from the Coastal Commission that are included in your agenda today on pages 74 and 78, there's no specification of who stakeholders might be or should be in terms of naming them specifically. So CCSD is not mentioned in the Coastal Commission's letters. I've been following the Coastal Commission on this for years, and there is, as I would put it in my words, a long-standing clash between San Simeon Community Services District and the Coastal Commission. I'll use the word clash, I'll use the word synonym. This fight has been going on for years and years and years. And by entering it now, I agree with Ms. Dickinson, prematurely, you are almost siding with one side of that issue, although it's not clear, since the whole situation is a bit vague, of exactly what side that would be. I appreciate Ms. Heinrich suggesting that if you do appoint an ad hoc committee, that President Howell and Director Farmer be its members. I think she's reading qualifications excellently for the potential meaning of what San Simeon is required to do. We don't know that for sure, so it's a bit iffy, although the recommendation, of course, is solid as a rock, blah, blah. I hope that you understand that an action that you take today will also engage the difference of opinion between General Manager Weigold and Utility Manager D'Enzo. which they clearly had on what's actually the best course of action in terms of necessity on this ad hoc committee appointment. So please don't, I agree with Ms. Tickison's nice terse word, it's premature to take action on this because you are siding in a big battle in ways that you have no idea about, at least from the discussion in the staff report today for this item. So if you want to get into it, well, if you want to get into it, that's your choice, with which I couldn't more heartily disagree. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Benhausen. Okay, Ms. Kellis, please join us.
Thank you, President Howell, and hello to the members of the board. It's interesting because we had an ad hoc committee in approximately 2019. I'm sure Director Farmer recalls it. At that time, we referred to it as an infrastructure committee. And it was at the time when Cambria wanted to send the wastewater to San Simeon, and we were to send our waste to Cambria. And at the time, the discussion, it was considered entirely impractical because DUDEC has just actually confirmed that in their report that for us to get anything to you guys would be a complete nightmare because Caltrans would be involved, private property would be involved, the bridge would be involved. We could spend 10 years trying to get the right of way to be able to get anything to you. I have no comment on whether you form an ad hoc committee, but I would like to reiterate that Director Farmer was on the last one, so it would probably be beneficial for him to be on this one as he has the history. Right now, we currently are handling as far as stakeholders. We are working with DUDEC, the company that we hired to help us move the wastewater treatment plant, and they are the ones that will be handling the stakeholder process. We are aware of the emails that you have. We have the same emails, and regardless of what comments that are made, believe it or not, we definitely are on top of this, and we've looked at every angle. As far as shoehorning anything, we had a Rincon report in 2008, which showed the properties that would be available to be able to handle a wastewater treatment plant. And the one that Mr. Kruzak mentioned is part of that Rincon report and has been submitted to DUDEC and to the Coastal Commission, just about to everybody. So if you do form an ad hoc committee, we will certainly look forward to working together with you. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Kellis, for joining us today. Thank you. I see is there any additional public comment? I don't see any. Ms. Riedel, do we have any written comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Riedel. All right, so we're coming back to the board now, and I'm just I didn't see who came up first, so I'll just go from, what is this, left? I'll go from left to right, so on my screen. So Director Steidel and then Director Gray.
Thank you, President Howell. Yeah, I was, even in reading the Coastal Commission letter, I think there was even confusion in the way that they defined what it is that they wanted stakeholders to do, or the manner in which they wanted to participate. And I agree that I feel that this is premature in action, because I also agree that San Simeon should be coming to us and acting as the point of interface, expectation, and information as it relates overall to their coastal hazard response plan. I mean, there may be elements within the CHRP as a stakeholder that we could offer options to them regarding, but we certainly aren't going to be reviewing their CHRP. I mean, that's way beyond, I think, the scope of what's intended. And I don't know that the Coastal Commission intended that. Their information is a little difficult to interpret. So I do agree with several of the public speakers. I do think that this is premature. I think that in terms of what I'll call heavy hitters, I think the county planning, our Bruce Gibson, state parks, all of those people probably carry some more weight and even being able to define the possibility of anything being done, what limitations we might have to be able to operate operate within or under. As a stakeholder, I understand we happen to be in the same situation in terms of operating a wastewater plant and some of the issues that San Simeon may be facing by having to establish a new one and the processes they may need to take, and the practicality of whether they'd be able to use the ocean outfall. All of those things are still way up in the air. So, I mean, by theory, we could establish an ad hoc, but considering that we haven't had anyone come to us yet, I don't know that we would be in a position to define the charter for that ad hoc. And perhaps this does need to mature some before we can get a handle on how that ad hoc would be directed in their work. So I would feel fine acknowledging that this exists and that the Coastal Commission is interacting with San Simeon and the work that they need to do, and that at some point interaction with us may be beneficial in terms of either shared information or offering of alternatives, or to advise them of what limitations we would be operating under. I found that Ms. Kellis's additional informations in terms of practicality were interesting also, because it brings in not only the stakeholders, but some other, interested parties like Caltrans. And there's a lot of intricacy to this, and we're just not at the point of an ad hoc yet. So literally my recommendation would be to set this aside for now until the process matures further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Director Gray.
Thank you, President Howell. Yeah, I largely agree with what Director Steidel says about the timing of this. We're waiting. I think we're waiting to be called for advice or input, but there's nothing happening yet for us to provide input on, essentially. So I would say I wouldn't want to rule out an ad hoc eventually, but it seems to me this is seems to be at the staff level at this point. For instance, I think Mr. Dienzo and Mr. Weigold should maybe be the ones to keep their ears out, essentially, basically make it known that we're interested in any collaboration or joint efforts or whatever at some point. But at this point, I think an ad hoc committee involving the board is almost beyond the need, because it's just a technical issue. It's an engineering issue, essentially. I do think we should not totally ignore the process, though, because the Coastal Commission, the Esme Wall's letter, is fairly clear about strongly encouraging us to get, to be part of the process, engage in the process, because we do have a role, possible role in solving this problem regionally. And it does, I don't think the door has been totally closed on the idea of having San Simeon waste transferred to Cambria. So we don't, and I think the Coastal Commission does not consider that issue closed either. Long story short, I think we should, at this point, put the, as Director Steidel says, put the ad hoc committee on hold, and direct staff, though, to essentially follow the spirit of that letter, Esme Wall's letter, and keep us posted and remain involved, and get involved in the process to the extent that it's feasible for them, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Director Gray. Before I come back to you, Director Steidel, do either of the other directors who haven't spoken yet, do either of you have something you'd like to say first? Yeah, Director Dean, Vice President Dean.
I kind of tend to agree with both Director Stidel and Director Gray, but I see that Mr. Dienzo has come back on. And since we're talking about possibly delaying this and sending it back to staff, I would like his opinion on us delaying an ad hoc committee.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Dean. Now let me come to Director Stidel, and then we'll come to Mr. Dienzo. Yeah, go ahead, Director Stidel.
Thank you, President Howell. My suggestion was actually a leverage off of something that Director Gray had said, and it may be a benefit for a letter to be drafted on the behalf of the board that could be directed to San Simeon and the Coastal Commission, saying that, you know, we stand ready to support in any way possible for conversations or sharing information or as participants of discussions. And while we await further statusing and feedback from San Simeon as to their needs. I'm sure there are other words that could fit in there nicely, but I think by doing that, we're acknowledging what the Coastal Commission is requesting and saying we're more than willing to do that, but we're not going to solve this nut either.
Thank you, Director Stidel. Director Farmer, do you wish to comment? I do have something to say, but I want to make sure everybody else has spoken.
No, oddly enough, since my name has been mentioned, I don't really have anything further to comment on with regard to it being premature. Obviously, at some point, we do need to be involved. And this is I think my main concern is, like sometimes what happens with us, that the process for San Simeon is already a little bit behind the schedule that it should be following. And I think anything that we can do to be of assistance to San Simeon in their situation, we should definitely be doing that. I do want to say one more thing also with regard to the possibility of some type of regional wastewater agreement to where we assist them, which has been broached in the past. The fact that I believe a number of intent to serve letters have been issued by the San Simeon CSD, and a number of these projects will have like multiple units. What I mean by that is like apartment buildings and that type of thing. And that's probably something we would want to consider with our involvement. What demand is it going to make in some fashion on our wastewater plants?
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Okay, Mr. Dienzo, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll kind of, I think, maybe sum up the discussion and see where we are.
Thank you, President Howell. So I want to reiterate, I don't think GM Weigold and I are conflicting on this. We are of the same mind on this. The nuance that I was saying is that I don't want to impose a regional solution upon San Simeon. So, but at the same time, I think I think a board ad hoc would be beneficial early in the planning process, only because I'm thinking, for example, of the San Simeon main and effluent line repair, for example. If there's an opportunity in the future, 20 years into the future, that we could have a regional solution. And this is just an example. So like, and if the alignment of our main line could be influenced by a project such as this, then yes, it would be beneficial for us to be involved early in the process. That's just an example of what I'm thinking. So I'm agnostic as far as as far as a board ad hoc, whether it should be now or whether it should be a couple of years from now. But I think it would be good to be involved early in the process, which I guess I'm saying now should be the time to do it. Yeah, and because the Coastal Commission is encouraging us to be involved in the process.
Okay, thank you. So,
President Howell, yeah, President Howell, you go ahead, because
oh, I'd rather hear what you have to say. I was just kind of trying to draw, tie a ribbon around everything, but let me, maybe you'll say what I was going to say anyway.
well, it seems to me that we're kind of we're homing in on a solution that kind of balances things. I don't think the actual formal setting up of an ad hoc committee at this point, I think, is not necessary, but I do think that communicating our interest, as Director Stidel suggested, our interest, our not more than interest, our commitment to be part of the process, I think is wise at this point. I'd also suggest this may not be an emotion, but the R&I committee might be good to have a role in this going forward. Maybe instead of a full-fledged ad hoc committee, but that should be maybe on their agenda in the coming months to maybe have their own ad hoc committee to kind of work with the district engineer to monitor the process and just keep us informed. But I agree, basically communicating, as Director Stidel said, with the Coastal Commission in a letter is, to me, the best solution at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, okay, that seems to be the general feeling here. I did have a question for staff, but I do think before I go there, I also, Director Stidel actually took the thought right out of my head, which is that I think a letter is needed.
Mhm.
The letter, even though it was not addressed to us specifically, it was sent to us by the Coastal Commission. And I think a response that expresses our willingness to participate in the process is excellent. And also that such a letter should go to San Simeon to express our willingness to cooperate and engage as they would like us to. So I'm all for that, and I don't know that we need a motion. A sense of the meeting might be sufficient. But I do want, before we actually head down that road and dispose of this item, I would like to hear once more because here's where I'm not clear. I have a feeling, and Jim Weigel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, is this agenda item coming before us because you and Mr. Dienzo feel that it's, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I have a feeling that the letter that we're proposing may not be what you folks were wanting. If this item came from you and it's on our agenda because of your feelings, I think I need to allow you to advocate for something other than a letter at this time, if you wish to do that.
Yes, President Howell, my thought here on this was we're being called out as a stakeholder, and we have to formulate our ideas on what, if any, we want to present to them and what we might be interested in. I can do that as a staff, but this is a board matter for direction. To, if do you want a regional plant? Do you want, what do you want us to pursue? And so that's a matter for the board, not for staff.
Got it. Okay, I think I see where I kind of understand what's happening here. So I think Director Gray's suggestion probably is the best, in that I think the letter is important and should go out, and I'll be more than happy to compose it, run it by staff, and possibly even by all other four of you to make sure you approve. If you don't communicate with each other, I think that would be acceptable, would it not, Mr. Carmel? Okay, so I think that's probably what we should do on that regard. And then the other aspect, which I thought was really a brilliant idea, Director Gray, is to have R&I look at this. And let's have that aspect of the process, which will be providing guidance to our staff. Let's have that originate out of R&I, come back to the board for further discussion, and then to staff. Yeah, Director Gray, go ahead.
You need a motion on the R&I referral?
Not necessarily, unless you want one. Let's ask the R&I chairman. Are you happy with the sense of the meeting if I phrase it and call for just without objection the following recommendation, or would you like a motion?
No, without objection, the following recommendation would be fine, and I'd be perfectly happy to have it come to R&I and to work together with Mr. Dienzo on this.
Good.
And I do agree with the letter.
Okay, so then I'll go ahead and summarize it and then ask for objections, and we'll go that way. if everyone's, well, you get a chance to object and then we can do it differently. So the sense of the meeting here is that that a letter should come from, official letter come from our board as a go out under my name and be approved by the rest of the board to advise the Coastal Commission and San Simeon that we stand ready to cooperate and express our willingness to do so. And that in addition, that this matter be referred to the R&I committee for them to investigate and come back to the board with a recommendation as to how to proceed, with the idea that that what's really needed here is guidance for staff. They're in a position where they need to know what the sense of the board is. That's kind of complicated, but does anyone object to what I just said? Okay, without objection, it's so ruled. So, fortunately we have a meeting recording here. So, Director Dean, you can refer to the recording to get the exact charge if you felt that I covered it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think then we have disposed of this item.
Okay.
Well. We have, it's 5-3. We have one more item before we get to the hearing. You want to do that and then take a recess before the hearing?
Yeah, this is just a receive and file, so.
Okay, without objection, we'll then move to the next item, which is 7B, to receive and file the fourth quarter budget report for fiscal year 21-22. So I believe, Ms. Duffield, I think this would be yours to present, I believe. Is that true?
Yes, it will. Do you want General Manager Weigel to introduce the item?
Good. Let's do that. So GM Weigel, if you'll be so good to introduce 7B for us.
Thank you, President Howell. Agenda 7B, as you mentioned, is to receive and file the fourth quarter budget report for the FY 2021-22 budget. And the staff recommends that you receive and file this and provide direction to the staff as appropriate. For background, and I'm sure that Ms. Duffield will get into this a little bit, the new Tyler finance system does not provides an ability for us to show how we ended the fiscal year. And then under item 8B next, you'll be able to better be prepared to consider the final budget for the coming fiscal year. Previously, the finance manager worked a bunch of spreadsheets by hand with numerous hours, and we're transitioning away from that to fall into the business process using Tyler. So the value is that these reports are pre-formatted and are readily available for us. So thus is the reason for you seeing this for the first time as a fourth quarter budget. We're implementing this new process, and so all the directors will be able to see how we actually finished the fiscal year. And depending on your questions, I'll turn it over to Ms. Duffield.
Okay, Ms. Duffield, you have the floor.
Sure. Thank you, President Howell. Good afternoon again, members, President Howell, members of the board. So as the general manager said, this is a fourth quarter report. So that's the time period from July 1st of 2021 through June 30 of 2022. During this quarter, which would be April 1st through June 30th, your board approved several budget adjustments. You approved budget adjustments to increase the Section 7 ESA funding for the WRF. You approved additional funding to complete the contract for the Zone 2 to Zone 7 Santa Rosa Bridge Waterline project. And you approved taking from reserves the litigation expenses that occurred early in the fiscal year. So all of those items have been included in this report. When you're looking at budget to actuals, those have all been included. As far as how each of the funds ended the year, the general fund, I apologize, there's a typo in that paragraph the general fund ended the year with a deficit of $214,556,000, not a surplus, I apologize. And that was largely because of the litigation expenditure for $545,000 that was taken from, that was funded from reserves instead of being allocated across departments like the administrative department is usually done. The wastewater did end up, the water fund did end up with a surplus. That's listed there of $256,000. WRF as well had a surplus, and also wastewater had a surplus. Those surpluses are highly due to capital projects that are multi-year, that a lot of them didn't get completed. So if you think of our revenue and expense plan, we have revenues that come in based on largely the rates, and if those capital projects don't get completed within that fiscal year, you see those surpluses. What you're going to see when we talk about the final budget is all of those projects that were incomplete at the end of June of 2022, you're going to be requested to move those forward into the new fiscal year. So you're going to see a lot of those surpluses be absorbed in project budget for the following fiscal year. So as General Manager Weigold was saying, this report format is new to you. In past years, we could put this consolidated on those colored spreadsheets that we were using. In the Tyler system, it just doesn't work that way. So it's better for you to see a clear, defined fourth quarter report, how the year ended. And that's something that we've not seen historically for the district. If you look through our district financial papers, every fiscal year, you'll see, the reports for quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and then we go to the next fiscal year. You never see how everything ended. You kind of have to go back to the final budget for the next year. So this kind of completes our year of reporting for the fiscal year. I did list on the back page for you, and additionally, what capital project activity happened through the year, what was completed. So that way, we've kind of talked about it each quarter, but it has been 12 months. So I thought it would be nice to have just a quick recap for you for all the things that have occurred during the year. And then lastly, we did review this report with the Finance Committee, and they were a little challenged with it because I think they were more expecting, the bundled report like we've given in the past. And so it was a little different for them to talk about just how the last quarter of the year, how that ended the year. And then when we got on to talking about the final budget, that I think helped all their reservations. They said, all this is a bunch of numbers. I want to know what you did and what you didn't do for the year. So I hope you all don't have those same questions. And if you do, I hope that when we talk about the final budget and what we're carrying forward and why, I hope that all those questions get answered for you. So that's all I have to provide. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Duffield. I think we'll go to the board first, and then we'll finish with public comment on this. So yes, Director Gray.
Yeah. Thank you, President Howell and Ms. Duffield. I just had a question. It's a number that kind of surprised me or caught me up short on the very first page for the general fund. The total current budget of 4.8 million, of which only 20.5% is not spent. Where does that number come from? Because usually you think of the budget for the general fund being in the the range of less, a little over between 3 and 4 million. It's in the second column. Yeah, second column.
Sorry, I don't know what page you're on.
Oh, this is on page 86. This is the first page. General fund summary. Sorry.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the very first column that you're looking at, that is the original budget.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see there is we have revenues of 3.4 million,
Mhm.
and we have expenditures of 3.6. And then that very next column that you see is any changes that happened through the year. That would reflect any budget adjustments that occurred. So that is truly your current year's budget, would be the 3.8 million in revenue and the 4.8 in expenses.
Okay.
And then moving over, the period activity that you see, that is just for the month of June.
Mhm.
That's just reciting June activity. And then the fiscal activity is what has happened to date. So
Mhm.
that is where we ended the year. Keep in mind, there's still the audit to occur,
Mhm.
and the auditor very well could make some audit adjustments. So, you know, those numbers are the best that we know today. But as time passes and the audit is done, those may slightly change.
So,
Excuse me. Yes. Okay. Director Jane, please.
so it's like about $1 million budgeted, ultimately budgeted with all the adjustments, but not yet spent, it sounds like, right?
Correct. And you'll see what we're carrying forward in all the different departments and why as we look at the final budget. You know, things like capital projects that weren't completed. You know, we might have had professional service contracts in place that weren't completed, those kind of things. Vehicles we had on order that didn't come in time. You know, any kind of project that has a grant, you're going to see carrying forward that remaining grant amount offset with that the offsetting expenditure.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things you'll see going into the final budget. And then at the end of the final budget, we'll recap everything, how we ended the year, what the carry forwards look like, and then what the new budget looks like, and how our reserve balances ended up with all those things that are actuals at this point.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
that kind of covered your question, I believe.
Yes.
Any other board members' questions? Okay. Okay. Now I think I'll go to the public and see, and then if there are questions from the public that you feel that it's appropriate to answer in this forum, you please go ahead with that, Ms. Duffield. But let's see what happens here. Okay, Dr. Bettenhausen, please.
Thank you very much, President Howell. If you would all turn to page 122 of your agenda today in this budget, I want to say that I find the version that Manager Duffield has worked out with Tyler software to be excellent, much more comprehensible to myself, having not studied economics, but as an ordinary person, I think once the definitions become clear of the columns, it's excellent for keeping track of monies. I want to thank President Howell because in the course of time between the last meeting and this one, he did send me an apology for misunderstanding my comments last time. When you, board, were looking at the cost tabulation for the EWS WRF and the numbers that President Howell had obtained and Mr. Farmer, Director Farmer. And if you will recall, please, I had said that what I was concerned about at that time, and still am, is the absence of approximately $500,000 annually of the cost for that plant, what we now call the WRF, and that $500,000 more or less was not included in either of these tabulations. I want to, on page 122, you'll see, and if you do the quick math, you'll see that this cost, this expenditure of $422,424 for the last fiscal year, you have to tabulate water relief fund and water reclamation fund and water reclamation capital fund numbers there under the amount, and you just add them up, and you will find that the expense for that year was at the end, the end of the year now, was $422,424. That was not paid from Fund 49 or 39 or 40. That was paid by Fund 11, which is the Simple Water Fund. And I grant that that's two that's a different way of listing the expenditure, but it's still an expenditure for a particular purpose, namely for this plant and the overhead administrative overhead allocation. And so I point out this to you just to make clear that I hope in any event that my heart condition, which is getting better, my heart condition has not affected my brain condition, I hope, because I think I've got these numbers right. And I think it's a major concern for keeping fiscal responsibility at the forefront of your cerebrum or cerebellum or whatever part of your anatomy you use for this. It is a major expenditure for this project. We do it every year annually. And if you tabulate the costs, please include it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Is there any other comment from the public? Comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Vidal, do we have any written comment on this item?
Not on this item.
Thank you. I do have one question I just noticed in my notes, Ms. Duffield. On page 101, I'm looking now, trying to find it. The question I have is there's a point in here where this is prose, and there's an allocation of property tax. I can't find it now, but the question is there a formula for allocating property tax to prose, or I'm not quite sure.
We allocate property taxes to each one of the general fund departments. The fire department gets the bulk of the share. And then we allocate the next group to to F&R. And then we allocate a small amount each year. It's usually around $50,000 to $60,000 that we allocate to pros each year. And then we've had to reduce a little bit of each of the departments at the point in time when the decision was made to allocate some 25,000 property tax to wastewater, if you recall that, to offset the low income discount that we offer. So historically, there's been a little bit more to all the departments, but because of that funding for the wastewater program, we have to reduce everything. But we do have a little formula. Like I said, the majority goes to fire and then facilities and a little bit to pros.
Okay, thank you. I was just kind of wondering because it sort of surprised me. I was wondering, I was figuring we were just throwing money over the fence whenever they needed it, that it wasn't exactly allocated, but that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Any questions on this one? Okay, no motion is required because we're simply receiving and filing the report. But I do want to express that I'm pleased with it takes a while to get used to the new format.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can get it in there, and of course that period activity, I kind of think this report was probably designed to be run once a month or something, and
correct.
Yeah, so it took a while for me to discipline myself to ignore that column, but anyway, it is good. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I still am challenged with the percent remaining column because
reverse,
it's the reverse of what we always looked at with percent spent. So I always have to say, why is that so low? What is going on? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's percent remaining, not spent. So I'm with you, and I look at it a lot. So still an adjustment for us all.
So I won't feel bad if I'm having trouble. The other, this is just a general impression that I had. I just wanted to say for the benefit of, particularly for our friends out in the world, as I closely examine this, and just based on what this last year has been, our financial health looks really quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, it looks like, at the risk of breaking my arm, patting us all on the back, it looks like there's been some real fiscal responsibility going on. When you look at the estimated amounts versus what's spent, it's very rarely is it very far off. It's been very good, and it's almost always, we finish the year in really good shape. Mm-hmm. That's my impression now, as a non-expert, So, yeah, go ahead, Director.
I agree with that. I would pat the staff on the back, especially for that. Ms. Duffield, General Manager Weigold, Ray, and the management.
Yes. So my sincere thanks from all of us to all of you. You know, that was really good. So now with that, if there are no objections, how about a 6-minute break, bringing us back at 3:20? Are you good with that? Oh yes, Ms. Duffield.
Can I make one more comment, please?
Please do.
In addition to everybody's being very frugal and being very cautious of their budgets and monitoring their budgets, we're also very transparent and bring things to the board as we know those things have occurred and are significantly changing the budget. So I think that has helped the plan as well, is we're not waiting till the very end of the year to recognize a whole year of activity that changed our budget significantly. We're doing it on a quarterly basis, and I think that has made a difference in our overall plan and knowledge that everybody has of the district finances.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that forward, because that's absolutely true. Yes. Okay, so if there are no objections, we'll stand in recess till 3:20. Anybody object? Okay, without objection, we're in recess till 3:20. One, two, three, four, five. Hi, Director Farmer. Go ahead. We're not in session yet, but if you wanted just to speak before, but we need to.
No, actually, I would want to, I'd rather wait until we are in session. I just wanted to get my hand up early.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. Welcome back. Okay. I think everybody's here. I'm going to assume that, here's, okay. I think we're all good. Any other? Actually, we're going to need Ms. Duffield back because that's going to be our next subject. Is we're going to go to 8B, which will be the presentation of the. This is the public hearing, actually, to discuss and consider adopting, basically discuss and consider the budget for the new fiscal year. So I need to. Okay. I think everyone is back. Welcome back, everybody. So we're back in session, and Director Farmer wanted to speak before we actually commence the next item. So, Director Farmer, please go ahead.
Yes, this is in reference to the previous item and some of the final comments that were made. First, I certainly want to agree with what Director Gray said with regard to patting the staff on the back. I think we're really blessed, Ms. Duffield and her staff, the people out in the field, and folks that, let's say, the supervisors of the various groups, and the work that they do with regard to being conscious and conscientious with regard to the spending of the ratepayers' money. But I do want to say, President Howell, you said our financial health looks quite good. It does look quite good. However, one of the reasons that it looks quite good is because of the ongoing rate increases that take place that kind of put a further demand on the ratepayers of the community, especially people on fixed incomes, and also the fact that we are about to embark on at least a $12 million bond that's going to create, even more financial challenges for us. I mean, the monies are needed, but I just wanted to put things in proper perspective as to what the appearance may be versus the reality that other people might be feeling, if you get my drift. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. So we're ready for item 8B. So Jim Weigel, would you please present this item, and then we'll, it's opening the hearing. I have to open the hearing first. So this is a hearing. This is the public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of Resolution 58-2022, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and reserve for encumbrances for the from fiscal year 2021-2022. So I hereby declare this hearing open, and I believe the first thing I need to do is take public comment. So we are now open for public comment on this item. Well, wait a minute, let me stop here. Mr. Carmel, should we not have her present the budget first and then go for public comment? I'm not sure on a hearing what the proper protocol is.
It's entirely within your discretion.
Let's go ahead.
People have had the budget available, so they certainly know what's in there, but it's up to you.
Good point. I'm going to go on that assumption that they do know what's in there. And so I'll take the public comment now, and then we can just proceed without interruption to finish it. Yes, Vice President Dean.
Did you want General Manager Weigel to introduce the item before you took public comment?
I suppose, except that it goes down into the actual. No, I think I'd rather wait.
Okay.
Yeah, and just treat it as all one thing rather than break it up. Because again, I'm operating under the assumption everybody has read it, has read the packet. So we do have, so this is the call for public comment on the resolution to adopt the budget for the new fiscal year 2022-2023 and the reserve for encumbrances from 21-2022. I see Dr. Bettenhausen has her hand up, so let's go ahead with her.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I simply want to draw to your attention to page 192, if you would. I'm doing nothing other than drawing your attention to this page and specifically to 11.62000-11.11, namely the allocation overhead. And I want to point out once again, please, that there is an increase for this present fiscal year to 2223. And the increase, the total now is $485,331 that will be an expenditure that we pay for the wastewater, for the water reclamation facility in this fiscal year, and that it will be paid by the water fund, Fund 11, not by the wastewater funds 39 and 40. I simply point that out to you, that it's there again. I want also to point out that on page 210, you have the way that there's allocation of administrative overhead calculation. It's worked out there how the administration arrives at this amount of money for each department. And you will note that the it's still called SWF operations and SWF capital. That just hasn't been changed yet to WRF now. That a certain amount of time has been allocated in percentage there of the totality. It's as clear as a bell to understand this on how these numbers are obtained by the CCSD administration and in particular Manager Duffield. I also note that somewhere in this agenda, I thought I had printed it out to be efficient and not take up too much of your time, but I note that in this item, there's also the new chart for the makeup of the staff and also how the payments go according to who's on the staff, what the whole salary range is for each position. Very helpful documents to understand what's going on with the staffing of the district. And I note again, although somebody has mentioned it earlier in the meeting, that there's no stipulation for a general manager assistant. That is not in the fiscal year prospects, according to the documentation that we still have. So that might entail, if it comes up in the near future or whenever, that might entail some amendments that you have to make to the document that you're looking at now. But I wish you well as you stroll through this. I'm becoming more and more infatuated with the usefulness of numbers as I pay attention to the CCSD over the years. That's a serious statement. It is wonderful how much can be disclosed in the numbers. On the other hand, as you will hear me comment on your next agenda item, if the numbers are not clear to somebody, like a foreign language isn't clear, I tell you, it's a toughie. So thank you, President Howell. If you would thank Manager Duffield for me, I'd be a very grateful woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen, and I pass your thanks on to Finance Manager Duffield. Is there any additional comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to now let's do the presentation. The public's had its shot, so it's now time to present the budget and have the board discuss it. And I think we can do that whole thing within the hearing. It's not like a 218 hearing where I have to close it. Is that true? Okay. Okay. So this is all within the context of the single hearing. So yes, so I guess let us commence, and I guess Jim Weigel, let me turn it over to you to kind of orchestrate this as the presentation goes forward.
Thank you, President Howell. Agenda item 8B is a public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of resolution 58-2022, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2022-2023, and reserve for encumbrances for fiscal year 2021 into 2022. So staff recommends that the board discuss and consider adoption of the resolution approving the final budget, reserve for encumbrances of multi-year projects, and contractual obligations, and provide direction to the staff as appropriate. So as you will see, Ms. Duffield present, you just had the fourth quarter final and year-end numbers. Now, what you're going to see added in that we didn't know at fiscal year close was all the costs of those projects that didn't complete, that carry forward, and those projects that may not have started. And Ms. Duffield will explain also, without some of the decisions that the board made to go into reserves, we would have had surpluses in a number of areas. But obviously, those decisions were made for very good reasons, and but those are now bundled in this final budget that you'll see outlined in a minute. So that's my comments, and I was going to say Finance Manager Duffield, but it's Administrative Department Manager Duffield is standing by to present.
Okay, thank you. So if Ms. Duffield, you have the floor.
Thank you. As the General Manager said, this is the final budget adoption. So just to remind the board, the difference between the preliminary budget and the final budget. The preliminary budget is required to be adopted by statute by the end of June each year, and that is setting your revenue and expense plan for the year. The final budget is required to be adopted by statute by the end of August each year, and that is recognizing how your previous year completed, meaning the fiscal year 21-22, and for any final encumbrances and things that were incomplete to move forward from fiscal year to fiscal year. So the budget that is in front of you today is exactly the same budget that your board approved back in the middle of June. And on the first page, on page 154 of this action, I tried to recap that for you. So when you look specifically, we'll talk about the general fund first. When you look at the general fund, the first 4 items that you see there that total the deficit of $97,230, that is what your board approved in June for all the different departments within the general fund. What isn't visible in the budget is this next item. And because it is paid directly to a balance sheet account, you don't see that it can't be revenue and it's not expense coming back into the general fund when wastewater pays back the general fund for their loan. So here you see how that changes our deficit. You know, in the event that wastewater is whole at the end of 22-23, they would be paying principal amount back to the general fund of $100,728 as per the interfund loan agreement schedule. Then the next line that you see is what was our actual surplus or deficit in the fund. That's what we just talked about in the last action we were discussing. And then the next item is the encumbrance requests that are being requested to move from 21-22 to 22-23. Those are listed on page 227 of your agenda. And for the general fund, there is a combination of expenditures along with some grants that were incomplete at the end of the fiscal year. So for example, the first 5 items on this list the fuel station computer replacement, the radio system upgrade, the utility truck and security upgrade. I guess there's 6 of them. And the Zoll X series EKG machine. Those were all expenditures in the fire department that did not occur by the end of June. And if you look towards the bottom of that grouping, you'll see that there's some grant activity that we have to move associated with that. So for instance, the radio system upgrade, we received a grant from County OES for that. That we could not acquire those radios. They just were not manufacturing them. They were not able to be acquired during last fiscal year. They've since been acquired, I think in early August this year. So we will see reimbursement of that grant come through on the expenditure reports, you know, the quarterly reports. And then we'll also see the recognition of those expenditures occurring. So it's just kind of the industry where things are hard to acquire right now. So we've had some challenges with that. The replacement of the fire truck, the utility truck and fire did not occur. And that was anticipated to be funded by a loan or a lease. So that will need to be moved forward into next year so they can hopefully acquire that vehicle in 22-23 as well. The security system was partially completed. There's still a little bit that's not done on electrical work to complete that project. So that's why you see that small amount there carrying forward, because it is a capital asset. So we do need to recognize that moving forward. And then the Zoll X series EKG machine, that is still pending grant approval. And so like it was stated in last year's budget hearings, if that grant is not successful, then the fire department would need to come back to the board to determine how that replacement unit can be purchased through reserves, or maybe there's another grant that's available at that point in time. So at this time, we just don't know the status of the grant. So then moving on to, there's one item, the EV station installation. There's still a little bit of budget that the board previously approved. So that will be utilized towards any future activity that needs to happen to move the EV station. And as well as a budget adjustment will probably be required at the time when that information is known. Then we move to pros, and in pros we have the East Ranch restroom. That's, you know, the big part of the design that the board previously approved, and it's offset with the Prop 68 per capita grant that you see below. We're bringing both of those forward. And then the next item you see is the skate park. That is the amount that the board programmed. The remainder of what the board programmed, I think it was $59,333 that was programmed. And so that's the remainder of what's carrying forward. And then there's one item in administration, that's the professional service that you see for $20,000, and that is related to the fees and charges that need to take place in this fiscal year, this study to review the fees and charges that we have, the non-utility billing rates that we have for the district. So the net of all of those items is $267,561, and that is being requested to move from fiscal year 21-22 to 22-23. The same holds true if we move into water. There's several items that are being requested to move forward. A lot of your big ticket items are the Stewart Street tank rehabilitation and the SCADA improvement projects and the water meter replacement projects. Those are like the key factors in this large number that you're seeing here for the requests for water. The request for WRF is just moving forward the 2-month reserve that has been unspent for the last few years. So we kept tabulating that per the board's request, that money keep being put into reserves and keep moving forward. WRF Capital, the board previously approved the trailer fill station at the beginning of last year's budget. And then just in May and June, there were some additional contracts that were approved by the board for the Section 7 ESA consultants. So all of those, of course, were just brand new contracts and were completed June 30. So those need to move forward. For the wastewater fund, we have the big ticket item is the lift station. We have 2 pieces of equipment that are listed on here, the tractor and the replacement of the van. So our tractor should be here fully equipped. It is due to be here at any time. So again, you'll see that showing up on the expenditure report when we do get that purchased. And then you'll also see it in the quarterly report activity. And the transport van, we still are struggling with. So we've had an order since last November with Ford to purchase such a vehicle. And our wastewater superintendent was notified at the beginning of June that our order was canceled, and Ford would no longer be manufacturing anything in the year, I think it's 22. They can't get parts. There's problems and they won't be honoring anything. So they canceled our order. So we were requested if we wanted to go ahead and try for the next year's production to go ahead and, you know, put our interest letter back in. Basically, they gave us a quote. It's still around the same price. The price didn't change much, still within the $55,000 budget. So we're hopeful that when they start producing the 2023 vehicles, that the wastewater will finally get their transport van. They're also looking at options for used vehicles, but there just aren't a lot of used vehicles out there in this price range for a transit van. So that's essentially what this process is asking the board to do, is review the list of things that were incomplete for projects and studies and consultants, and requesting to move that forward from fiscal year to fiscal year. In your packet as a whole, you'll see, if you look at the bottom, at the very bottom of all the detail pages from the Tyler system, you'll see that those are still the June 9th reports, which that's when we brought you, when we were printing the packets, getting ready for the preliminary budget process. So these are still the same reports. If I regenerated these reports here in July and August, I would actually start getting period activity and physical activity, because it doesn't stop because it's the budget. You know, we're still actively paying vendors. So I chose to just leave the reports as is and not cloud it with current year expenditures, because that would just be really confusing. And there's no way to block those columns from the report. So I apologize that it's still the same thing from June, but at least you're comfortable with seeing the same thing you saw before that you approved. And then just repeating some of the items that we provided you in the budget package. The admin allocation of administrative overhead, you know, that's the same as what was in the budget. And I made note of there still being a reference to SWF in there somewhere, so I will get that changed. I thought I've caught it everywhere, but apparently they're still sneaky and they're still in there somewhere. I included the staffing information. So the salary schedule that you see here was the salary schedule that the board adopted effective July 1. That's the same schedule per the resolution 44-2022 that the board adopted that on. You see the position allocation list, the before and after org chart, the capital improvement project list. Then we go to all of the department requests. We just talked about our reserve for encumbrance listing. And then the last page that you see is your reserves. So when you look at the reserve worksheet, again, you're going to see, where we began, which was the audited numbers for June 30, 2021. That's where we begin our balances. And then we final all that happened in 21-22, including all of the encumbrance requests that we're requesting to move forward. And then we talk about what was approved previously in the proposed budget for 22-23. The last section is all talking about interfund loans. And so at this point, there's no change from what we saw in the beginning of last year's budget in the 21-22 budget, because the audit is not complete yet. And until the audit is complete, we won't have an idea if it's true that wastewater does have a significant surplus and can pay the general fund. That's always been our agreement since the interfund loan went into place, that we make sure the audit numbers show a surplus like our system is after all any audit adjustments. And then we go ahead and document on the books that interfund loan payback for that fiscal year. So that balance will hopefully come down by about $100,000. And so it'll be, instead of almost 400, it'll be almost 300. So that definitely helps the wastewater financing program having that a little bit reduced.
Right.
So the other thing that's on here is, we talked about it a few minutes ago, is the unused reserve for WRF of the 2-month operations. That's listed on here as well in the far right-hand columns. You'll see those amounts listed. So that is all I have for you for the final budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Duffield. So yes, fellow board members, questions for Ms. Duffield? Okay, one more time, just to make sure everybody has a chance to catch their thoughts up here. Okay, see,
Very clearly explained.
very clearly explained, yeah. Oh, okay, Vice President Dean.
Director Gray just said what I was going to say. This is a very thorough, very clearly explained report, and I really do appreciate all the detail. It really helps to understand everything we're seeing in print the way that Ms. Duffield explains it. So thank you very much.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else? Oh, Director Farmer looks like yes. I could tell when you're about to raise your hand.
Well, just giving thought to the fact that Ms. Duffield will soon be departing the district. I want to thank her for this being, I guess, the template that all other finance officers would be aspiring to in the future. So I think I just want to thank Pam and her staff, but especially Pam, for all the hard work that she's done over the years, and thank her especially for, as everyone has noted, the excellent explanation of this budget and how much it's appreciated.
What?
And everything.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Steidel.
I did notice, is Ms. Bettenhausen still on?
She's her tile is here, but her hand is not up. So I think she's probably, oh, there, she just left. Oh, now her hand is up.
Yeah, she raised her hand.
But we've already taken public comment on this one. And Ms. Bettenhausen, you did have an excellent comment, as I recall, on this. So I think I need to move forward, or not. We're not going to make our time constraint. Anybody else? Director Seidel, your hand is still up.
Yes, thank you, President Howell. Again, kudos to Ms. Duffield. One of the things I really appreciate about the thoroughness with which she provides detailed information is that it helps us significantly at the board level when there are any number of things that we may be involved in, be able to keep a traceability between actions and to remind us of things as it goes forward. It kind of helps set up the cadence and flow of information, and it makes it much more easy to grasp and be reminded of the way that you got from, A to B to C. And the efforts that she's taken to develop that over time is extraordinary, considering that she started out with Excel spreadsheets and has brought us full circle through a system that works and the traceability and visibility into all of the detail financially. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Anyone else? Okay, other than seconding everything that everybody else said, Ms. Duffield, I have no further thing to say. It's I think we've covered it rather completely. We will need. Oh yes, go ahead, Director Gray.
Oh, I might be stepping ahead here a little bit. I was going to make a motion.
You're reading my mind, right? So yes, we need a motion to adopt Resolution 58, 2022. So that could be you.
So the hearing is closed, formally closed, right?
No, I on this one, according to Carmel, it doesn't really.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're still in the hearing, but we'll.
I move that the board adopt Resolution 58-2022, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and reserve for encumbrances fiscal year 2021-2022.
Excellent. Vice President Dean, is that a second?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Excellent. It's been okay. It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 58-2022, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and reserve for encumbrances for fiscal year 2021-2022. Do we have any debate? Seeing none, I think you're ready for the question. So, Aaliyah, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Gray, aye. Vice President Dean,
Aye.
Vice President Dean, aye. Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Farmer, aye. Director Stidel,
Aye.
Director Stidel, aye. And President Howell.
Aye.
President Howell, aye.
Vote is 5 ayes and 0 nays. The motion passes unanimously. So I hereby close the public hearing at this point. Now I see some hands up, so and I have a feeling you're going to want to extend the meeting. Is that?
That's not going to raise. Yeah, that's good.
We're getting really good. If we goodness says we won't have to talk at all, we could just sort of telepath.
Just throw up hands.
Yeah. It would be optimistic to say we could finish at 4. I think we should probably do 4:30. I don't go too far because you know that old adage, right? But 4:30 seems reasonable. Is that reasonable to everybody? Okay. Vice President Dean?
Perhaps we should check with Mr. D'Enzo and Ms. Bland to see if that gives them enough time for their presentation.
Thank you for asking. Yes, Mr. D'Enzo, Ms. Bland, either one of you, how much time do you feel you need for the presentation itself?
I think 4:30 would be reasonable.
4:30? Okay. And Ms. Bland isn't saying anything, so I'm presuming she agrees. So, okay. Oh, you do agree? Okay, good. All right. So it's we need a motion of some kind. I'll do it. Oh, okay. Vice President Dean has just moved to extend to 4:30. And I second it. And so does Director Stidel. So I'm asking for unanimous consent to extend to 4:30. Okay. Nobody disagrees, right? Don't raise your hand if you agree. Okay, very good. So excellent. So without objection, we'll continue till 4:30. And now I think I have to open another public hearing. So this is a public hearing to discuss and consider to adopt Resolution 59-2022 declaring a Stage 3 water shortage warning and implementing shortage response actions. And so I think at this point, probably it would be best to have it presented first, I think. Unless somebody disagrees, I think we'll go with the presentation and then go to the public and then back to the board. Without objection, then we will go ahead with the presentation. So GM Weigel, would you please start it out and then we'll go from there.
Yes, thank you, President Howe. Agenda item 7A is discussion and consideration to adopt resolution 59-2022, declaring a stage 3 water shortage warning and implementing shortage response actions. Staff recommends that the board discuss and consider adopting this resolution and implementing the recommended water shortage response actions. I did want to make an action on a couple of points before Mr. D'Enzo's presentation. One is we are on a new plan that is supply and demand oriented. So the reason why we're here today is because we are basically using more water than is available given the model, and so essentially we'd run out of water before the rainy season starts. So our methodology of conserving more is to ratchet up the actions, and ratcheting up the actions can be accomplished in two different ways. We can increase the stage, and we can increase actions within each stage. So in other words, we could remain in stage 2 but implement additional actions from stage 3, for example. In this case today, what you're going to hear from the district engineer is that he's recommending not only increasing to a stage 3, but also adding actions to that stage 3 standard. So pending your questions, I turn it over to District Engineer D'Enzo when you're ready, President Howe.
Okay, thank you, Jim Weigel. So yes, Mr. D'Enzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Howell. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation here. So I hope you see the presentation in front of you called Stage 3 Water Shortage Warning. So I want to preface this this presentation by saying that at this point, we got the second month's readings for August, and our San Simeon wells are trending average at the moment. So, but at the same time, based on our new metrics, and we are still in a drought. So that's why we are presenting this as a good precautionary note, because the data does show that we do need to conserve a little bit more to meet our targets. So so as far as the new table that we introduced to you from our water shortage contingency plan and annual water supply and demand assessment, we presented this table, and as was promised, we would start populating it with actual numbers. So now that July has passed, we were able to populate it with the July actual demand. So there was just as a rehash, we had the unconstrained demand at the very top, the top line, which was based on a dry year, but we wanted to show the anticipated total water supply, which is shown here on this line where my cursor is at. So we were trying to hit the 45 number, but the actual number that came from July based on our demand was 50.64, which didn't meet the proposed target that we were hoping to get, which would have kept us at a stage level 2. Because of that, there needed to be a little bit of catch up as far as maintaining our demand levels inconsistent with our anticipated dry supply levels. So that would push us to over 20%. In this case, we would need to conserve 24% for the month of August, which would put us into stage 3. And we hope that if we were to hit these numbers, these targets, then we would be able to move into a lower stage later on in the year. But that's pretty optimistic. So so that's really the reason why we are proposing this the stage 3. But as you can see, the data does show that we would need to conserve 24% to maintain our in keeping with our supply.
I see.
So as was as shown in our staff report, where is this coming from? So one of the things that we say in our staff report is that really the metric that's driving this is during the summer months, we're actually getting more vacancy. Not vacancy. We're getting more occupancy in our population here. Meaning more people are starting to stay here in Cambria. People who normally don't stay here during the summer months or during the times of the year, they like to come here during the summer months, which I think that's obvious to all why you would want to do that. So so that in essence is driving a lot of this demand. But the other thing that that we also shared in our staff report is that the biggest users have been our commercial accounts. And as you can see from, this is just reference from the staff report from figure A, which is the average gallons per account per day. That's what GPAD means. Because actually our single family residents, most of the residential population is doing their part. We don't see a lot of, we actually don't even see a lot of irrigation from our residential accounts. But what we do see is there is a bigger contribution from our commercial accounts. Because of that, our actions are focused on helping these accounts with more water conservation restrictions. So our proposed actions as a result of this stage 3, which is also in your packet, it would be exhibit A of this packet, where we are proposing additional restrictions per the resolution. And it's basically summarized like this. We would propose irrigation be limited to 2 days a week, 2 days per week, 15 minutes per station still. But the board can opt for 1 day a week if you so choose. And also another thing that we're hoping to do is have a mandatory certification of compliance for certain customers. And typically we're going to be reaching out to our commercial accounts, and also for accounts that have large landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we would also propose no filling, refilling, or replenishing of pools, spas, or artificial water features. And then all of the others, as they're listed in that in that exhibit A of today's packet. And as part of an example of what we mean by this, is that we would mail all of the commercial accounts and the accounts with large landscapes to direct them to this certification form that they would need to fill out. So this will be available online, and really the idea here is that it would help give attention to our commercial accounts, and would provide them with additional information, and also solicit assistance by staff to help them with their conservation goals. So all these customers will be required to be certified, and we will notify everyone by mail. Again, the main purpose is to engage these partners so that they are aware and can actively engage in conservation. So that's the main point of this. So, and also we will also be providing some commercial resources. Some of these our water conservation staff is already doing. We're already doing the water use efficiency walkthroughs. We ordered a bunch of tent cards that are going to be customizable to be able to put their placards and flyers there. And also, as we've already been doing, we would also be providing water efficient fixtures as needed if they've not already done so. Toilet tank banks, which is this little bladder looking thing here, and also flow restrictors and shower timers. See, these are some of the things that we've already been providing, but again, we're going to continue to make these available, and we'll be focusing our outreach to our commercial accounts. So in conclusion, we think this is achievable. Our average single family residential customer uses 5 units per billing cycle. These customers are doing their part and only need to continue their good habits. So, again, they're not the focus of what we're in order to achieve our goals. So the high water users we have seen are, they have room to conserve and should take advantage of these programs that we are going to be making available to them. And also, if you have 2 residents in your home that are using more than 5 to 6 units per billing cycle, we can help with that. So if there are those cases that you feel like you could do more, we're available to assist with that. So I think the action before you is pretty simple. And so again, I have question, that concludes this short presentation. But anyway, the action is simple. We ask that we move to a stage 3 and then adopt the resolution that also references the Exhibit A with the additional restrictions, which is also stated in the resolution. So with that, I'm available for questions. And also, Melissa Bland is also present and is able to answer questions. But before I do that, Melissa, do you have anything to add before we open it to questions?
Yes, Melissa, please.
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
We're available for questions.
Great. Well, let me pull up my screen here. Okay, members out there in the public, let's go to you first, and then we'll come back to the board to complete the discussion. So, okay, Dr. Bettenhausen, please.
Thank you very much, President Howell. As you know, I sent you an email the board an email earlier this week, as well as to the staff. And I had developed a chart showing the comparative conservation between residential and commercial every year since 2014. So you have in front of you that chart. I put in lots of colors, making it look like I had a clue what I was doing in terms of making a chart. But as I said, that was my first attempt. And so I'm glad I got no responses saying it's an error. So I think it's accurate to say that residential conservation has consistently been higher than commercial, except for the first pandemic year, but it's gone back. And so residents are using about 41% less than we used in 2013, right before this big drought declaration. Whereas the commercial units now are using only 18% of what they used then. So it's a significant difference. I do, however, have a question. On page 146 of your agenda, I look at at figure C, to which Manager Dienzo just referred, and it is graphically very obvious that in terms of the gallons per day per account, commercial uses much more than residential of any kind or vacation rentals. But I want to point out that there are only less than 200 commercial accounts total. So if you count all the lodges, all the restaurants, all the bars, all the bookstores, et cetera, that might have a restroom, it's still only 200 and some customers, whereas it's way over 3,000 customers who are residential. So I understand the figures here and why they're put here. I think it indicates something that's clearly essential for the well-being of the community, including the creeks, I must say, having paid very close attention to what's happening at Santa Rosa right now. Excuse me. And I think it's essential that we get more conservation going. And from what's been laid out astutely by the staff, and I thank them in this item, it is necessary for commercial to be much more conserving of our general water. I want to say that commercial already uses around 35% of all the water in Cambria. And the California Coastal Commission recommends that around 20% be the standard, although it's the minimum standard. So there is no maximum. It could be that a town would want commercial to use 90%. I don't know. But I think in my judgment, pseudo humble that it is, 35% and up for commercial is too much. It's our residential use is too much. And that's because it's been too much for the creeks and the surrounding habitat for decades. And we are up against it when we look at how we humans are using the water. So I thank the staff very much for a very clear document. I hope that in the future, the one-page descriptions of stages will contain a date so that I can know which stage 3 that I've got printed out comes from what, without having to try to figure it out from the text. So I was looking at one that was 3 years. Well, that wasn't. So please put the date on these stage pages. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Okay, Deborah Scott, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, President Howell and board members. My question is this. So you were mentioning in your report the commercial certification or the certification for the commercial accounts. I was wondering, is that based on what they fill in a form and they say we're doing X, Y, and Z? Or is that actually a certification where a staff member goes in and certifies that they are actually doing what they say they're doing?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Scott. Let me take the rest of the comment and then we'll have Mr. Dienzo answer your, I had that same question. So thank you, Ms. Scott. Okay, Ms. Dickinson, please.
Thank you, President Howell. That makes 3 of us. As I look around the state and we read the news, we see the news, and we see how devastating it is with the water supply to big cities that are used to having lots of water. And like Lake Mead, Lake Powell, for example, we depend on 2 creeks. And, you know, 3 or 4 months ago, I remember speaking to you all and saying, we need to be doing something now, not as we're approaching September. So while I thank Mr. Dienzo and Ms. Bland for the report, but it's not good enough. You don't just go around assisting commercial. You actually have to do something. You have to mandate in order for something to happen. This is something that for whatever reason, the CSD seems to want to favor commercial. And I understand that people are paying a lot of money to stay in a hotel bedroom or motel. It's expensive and they're on vacation. They want to, you know, have the luxury of having a nice spa, whatever, but we don't have the water. And we have to be far more realistic than just saying we can assist you, we can do this, we can do that. No, it's not what you can do, it's what you have to do. And I think that the district, the water department should be not depending on the board to opt for a 1 day a week watering. That's their job to figure out. You're not there looking at the meters and getting the reads and the well levels. It is up to staff to tell you, in this case, what should be done. So thanks for the report, and for heaven's sakes, do something a little more serious because we're going to end up in a big mess if you don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Do we have any additional public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Ms. Riedel, do we have any written comment?
I have one. I don't know if you noticed, we also have Michael Thomas.
Oh, okay.
Who's sitting.
Let's let Michael Thomas speak, and then we come back with a written comment. Thank you for that. Yeah, I missed that. So yes, please go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
Thanks and apologies. It took a couple clicks on the button. Just little to add. Most of the comments.
You're fading away.
I just wanted to reinforce the inappropriateness of, at this stage, to say up to 2 days per week of landscape irrigation, and I would concur that I don't see any situation where irrigation more than 1 day a week in Cambria makes sense in any of the landscaping. Any landscaping that requires more water doesn't belong in this community. I just wanted to reinforce that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Okay, before we go, let's take the written comment, and then we'll go back to the board. So yeah, please, Leah, please go ahead.
Sure. And this was written comment that was actually provided at last week's meeting, but it was relevant to item 8A. So this is from Lori Slater regarding water stage. Dear President and directors, please reconsider Cambria's current water shortage immediately. The view from the Santa Rosa Creek Bridge is quite dry. Hearst Castle is currently in stage 3, implementing greater restrictions in response to the ever-increasing drought conditions. Cambria needs to be especially proactive in this high tourist season. Thank you, Lori Slater.
Thank you, Ms. Riedel.
Sure.
Okay, I think we are now ready to come to the board. And again, I didn't quite see whose hands up, so I'm going to go across my screen with Director Gray, followed by Director Steidel.
Thank you, President Howell. Yeah, one short question and maybe a slightly longer one, but for either Ray or Melissa to answer. I too am curious about just the workings of the certification process, what the mandate or the penalty for not complying is. It'd be interesting to see how much clout it has, essentially, or teeth. The other question I have is a little more specific to items. What among all these items that are these actions, as you say, that are listed under stage 3, and then the additional ones, how much do we know which are the higher impact actions? In other words, which are the ones that would be most likely to produce the kind of results you want? Because I see, certain things like turning off faucets while brushing teeth or shaving. Well, of course, most of us do that and that sort of thing. As opposed to maybe and people are talking about reducing irrigation, even reducing irrigation to 1 day a week. I'm not sure how many people are doing it 2 days a week. So I want to know where do you see the impact? Where do you see the actual reduction coming from on this list of items?
Okay, let's do that. So let's see, Mr. Dienzo or Ms. Bland, either one of you. Either one of you jump in on that one.
Yes. So yes. So Ms. Bland will answer that question, but she'll also describe the initial question, if we will, the certification process that we mentioned. So Melissa, please go ahead and answer, please.
Please go ahead, Melissa.
I do have a form already drafted. Would you like me to share my screen so that you can see that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get that up. Okay. Are you seeing the shortage response certification form?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the conceptual form that we've created in preparation for your board approving what I'm referring to as a positive verification method, which is really, as Ray explained in his presentation, designed to just simply engage and make sure that all of our commercial customers are aware of the restrictions. Some of the feedback that we receive is that people don't even know when stages change. The postcards sometimes get lost in the mail or, thrown away as junk. So this is really just about making sure that people are aware that the restrictions are in effect. It would require some basic information, the customer of record as indicated on the bill, the service address, the account number, how we will have a notice that's sent through the mail that identifies you've been selected as one of the large landscapes, you know, required under Resolution 59/2022 to certify compliance. And then we list out the actual restrictions in effect, provide, you know, whatever resources that we have available. In this case, it's sending them to printed materials or asking them to contact us to do a water use efficiency walkthrough or a landscape audit. And then essentially there's just a box that they check that affirms that they have the authority to be completing this form on behalf of that service address, and they'll submit it to us. This is through the Laserfish system that we use, so we'll be able to track all of the information that is submitted and use that to compare against the list that we've sent out of the people who are required to certify, so we can notice people who do not submit the certification and then reach out to them. Under the water shortage contingency plan, we have some enforcement authority. If we send someone a notice saying that they're required to submit the certification form, that could be considered the verbal, or not verbal, but written citation with no penalty. A follow-up to that could be a written citation with a penalty, and repeat violations of this requirement come with increasing penalties, I think up to $500. There is no in-person certification recommended. Once again, your board has the authority to direct staff to do whatever you think is necessary to achieve the reduction that we're looking for. If you want a random selection of the people that are required to certify to be visited in person, we can do that. I think that would be more beneficial for our large landscape users, but our commercial accounts, it would be an outreach opportunity more than anything. There's not really a way for us to consistently monitor whether a restaurant is, waiting for someone to request water before they serve it, or, if a hotel is maybe filling up a pool. Those are things that we have no technology in place to be able to monitor at all times. A one-off visit is a good chance for us to let them know that these are, these requirements are in effect, but it's not really going to do much in terms of, identifying instances of water waste. I think I'm able to also share, let's see, I have too many tabs open. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this table is a modified version of the table 8-2 that is in our water shortage contingency plan. We have an errata sheet posted on the website. It hasn't been widely publicized, but the Department of Water Resources contacted staff to request a modification to a couple different tables, this one included, because it didn't meet the requirements of the water code. So we expanded this table to include more descriptions using the DWR provided demand reduction actions. So we could not specify these are drop-down items that we chose, and then we could kind of explain what they are here. But this actually provides staff's estimate in terms of the actual effectiveness, so the percent reduction we would expect to achieve from these different measures. So in a stage 3, and this is kind of based off of best practices and benchmarking that's statewide. So in many cases, staff has some work to do to fine tune this to be more specific to Cambria. It definitely does lean heavily on landscape restrictions being the more impactful restrictions. And in Cambria, the data doesn't support that. Irrigation is actually pretty rare. Most of the landscaping in Cambria is drought tolerant and natives. And many people in normal years and even in dry years can get by with very little to even no irrigation outdoors. So that is part of the reason why we have recommended the positive verification on the commercial end, and why we are focusing most of our outreach and boots on the ground enforcement along Main Street and Moonstone Beach Drive.
Thank you, Ms. Bland. I see before we, Director Stidel, before we go to you, I see we have 5 minutes left on our 4:30 deadline. I have a feeling we're not going to make it. Would you guys, 4:45? Okay, I assume I just heard a motion in a second without objection. Okay, are there objections? No objection? Seeing none, we'll go to 4:45. Now Director Stidel.
Thank you, President Howell. There are a number of things that have been discussed that I think, number one, I think that the residential community has been nothing but absolutely committed to the kinds of conservation and dealing with restrictions and everything that are part of the evolving water saga, not only of us but of most everyone now. I don't know that it does any good to do things that relate to looks what has happened to other places that have large water resources, because unfortunately populations in large urban areas with large water resources tend not to think in the same kinds of conservation ways that we do here. And I think that what we have saved, we've proven that we had the highest reduction, I think, in the county, if not somewhere high in the state statistics when that went on. So I think that we're very conscious of it, and we do a very good job of it in our residential areas. I think that over time, because residents change, that probably keeping that to the forefront to remind people that those are the kinds of things that need to happen if there's someone who hasn't been in town but 2, 3, 4 years. I think there are a couple of things that are impacting us in the residential area. One of them has to do with particularly COVID, because there were a lot of people that ended up spending time here on an ongoing basis that hadn't before, where they would visit for a weekend. Now they were staying for a month. So I think those kinds of things particularly have driven it in the summer months, the May, June, July, August timeframe when school's out. So the whole family is going to come for a month or two. The part of it that is bothering me a little bit is putting the onus on the commercial community or the business community being the bad guys in this. It bothers me if that kind of message is being sent. I do think that some of the suggestions in terms of the motels and so forth, I think they actually have more control of the situation than the restaurant bases. Because the motels can do things like, okay, if you're going to be here for 3 or 4 days, we're not going to change the bedding, or we're not going to fill the pool, or those kinds of things, and we can educate them in that process. But when you're talking about particularly the restaurants in town, they already have water systems that are used for washing the dishes. All of those kinds of things have already been in place for the large water users of restaurants in town. But what's their other option? Granted, you don't serve water unless someone asks, or it's bottled water and they have to pay for it. But short of that, what do? Just shut down your business level? I mean, do you say that we're only going to fill half of our tables in the restaurant? I'm going to reduce my revenue so that I'm not going to be using as much water. There's an impracticality in there too with some of the business environments in town. And I'm not doing that to, I'm not putting this on the table to try to make an argument for leave somebody alone, or, you know, they're already doing things, don't pay any attention. That isn't it. We need to pay attention across the board as much as possible. But you need to recognize where people have control over the situation and where they don't. And particularly in the restaurant industry, they have very little control other than a tweaking here and there, or just by either closing a number of days during a week or reducing the amount of people that they serve. And we're challenging them then to lose their business and their revenues during the summer months again. And with the heat that has been experienced above and beyond COVID, now we're rolling into the heat waves that people are feeling. There's a lot of use of coastal communities, and people are staying here. And there are very few places that I've been in this community with restaurants that are not full continuously to the gill with people waiting. There is a large population of people who are here, and it isn't just the day trip kind of environment anymore. There are people here because they're here. So my purpose in going through this whole monologue, and I appreciate your putting up with me in this regard, is that we're talking about a lot of things, but the things that I wasn't hearing at all was trying to level the playing field a little bit in the regard of how business and commercial entities are considered, because we don't want to all of a sudden make them the bad guys.
Okay.
I would be happy to go to, you know, 1 day a week if the board members, other board members for the irrigation, if other board members feel that that would be beneficial to assist. And there are probably some other things about the reaching out and the educating that will continue to have to happen. But those are my observations, and thank you for giving me the time.
No problem. Thank you. Let's see. We did have Ms. Bland there who probably wishes to respond to Director Steidel. Let's go with that first, and then we'll go to Vice President Dean. So yeah, Ms. Bland, please.
Thank you, President Howell. I did want to respond to some of Director Steidel's comments. I do agree that it's a bit anecdotal in terms of the data that I can provide you, but I did a tertiary analysis of the amount of water that our commercial customers consume compared to the EDUs allocated to them, and they're within that range. They are using what we planned for them to use. So by no means are we saying that our commercial customers are wasting water. Simply, there is opportunity for those customers to conserve. For example, even in the restaurant industry, our food service partners, there are pre-rinse spray valves that are more efficient than the varieties that we made available through a retrofit program, I want to say back in 2003. And then there's also training that we can do through the water use efficiency walkthroughs with restaurant staff. We actually time those to try to be towards the busier part of their day so that we can see staff at work and make recommendations to management regarding habits in terms of leaving a spray valve on continuously even when they're not rinsing dishes, or filling basins when they don't need to be filled. There's obviously practices that they cannot change for sanitary reasons, health and safety concerns, and that's sort of a learning process for us. But it definitely helps to get us in there. So we are really trying to push those walkthroughs as much as possible. There's also some savings to be achieved in dishwasher rebates, and we're actively researching how to make those happen. So again, if we're not able to see the reduction that we want immediately, we are researching options to to try to bring back to you to increase the actions being enforced in the community. And it is a tricky situation because the increase in consumption right now is really tracking with, as the staff report states, occupancy rates. And we do not want to be asking our commercial, customers to just turn people away. That's something we're trying to work around, and it's requiring a bit of creativity.
Thank you, Ms. Blend.
Thank you. Yes, so Vice President Dean.
Okay, I agree with some of the commenters that the irrigation should be reduced to 1 day a week. Some of the commercial businesses have quite a bit of landscaping. Some of the homes, for example, out in Lamert have large landscapes, and those landscapes use a lot of water. And I think 1 day a week here in this climate is adequate. I don't know how much savings that will make, but on large landscapes, I would think it would. I do, we don't even water 1 day a week. We're lucky if some of our plants get a dribble once a month. And it's gray water. So I think 1 day a week is adequate. I also think an in-person visit with the certification form would give you an opportunity to do a water conservation audit, so that you could help the restaurants or the hotels or whatever commercial businesses you're going to help them find ways to save water and become more efficient. So I kind of, if it's not too much drag on your time, I do think an in-person walkthrough to get the certification forms filled out would be helpful. I don't know how many of these businesses, restaurants, hotels, et cetera, have retrofitted their toilets, showers, tubs, and like you said, the dishwashers, perhaps in the restaurant. I think there's probably water savings there that could be found for them if you did do an in-person water audit. So that would be my thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President Dean. Any other comments? Okay, I just have one. Oh yeah, Director Farmer.
I just want to concur with what everyone, Director Stidel, Vice President Dean have said. Also, I thought that Michael Thomas' comment earlier with regard to watering landscaping, if you're needing to water more than once a week, that landscaping doesn't even belong here. Obviously, even though we're focusing on this as being a local issue, which it obviously is, this is becoming a global issue with regard to less and less water being available just about everywhere. And I don't know how we as a district go about relating the fact that we're a global community, but we're also, no matter where you're going, we have to cultivate a sense of community responsibility as to how we're using this precious resource, which is water. How we relate that consciousness to people that are visiting here in the commercial area, I don't necessarily know, but somehow, like I say, a greater awareness of wherever you go, you need to be as conscious as possible as to, like I say, how you're using water. I don't know how to go about that, but it seems to me that whether it's literature that we hand out at the motels or at the businesses, I really can't, or the motels and the restaurants, I don't know. But somehow this greater awareness and understanding that community is like communication and unity, and we all have to act in concert to achieve the best results. That's, I don't know if this made as much sense as what everybody else said, but that's how I'm feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Yeah, I don't have much more to add except the sense that I'm getting is, and I think Director Steindl made a good point. I don't think it's wise at this point to approach anyone with a punitive attitude at this point. I think we achieve better results if we assume from the start that that everyone wants to do the right thing. Now, they may disagree as to what that is, but I don't think that we have. At least it's better to start with that assumption that we're not dealing with bad actors. So I think the sense of fairness.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the clock too here, trying to see if we can get through in 5 minutes. So what I sense is, unless there's some direct wording change, Director Steidel, that you would like, I don't see that what we're doing presents a punitive thing at this point. Although, but if you feel that we need to change wording, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I think that probably it wasn't so much that I was addressing anything punitive in terms of what the contingency plans were, as I was addressing some of the positions being provided by the public. There was a focal point to demonizing a little bit the business community, and it bothered me.
Well, and you're well with your remarks were well. I thought they were very good, and I think we all can benefit from thinking about this and not finding devils where there are none, or that kind of thing. I see two other commentary. One thing before I abandon my little soapbox, what I think is I think there may be a sense that you'd like to go to 1 day of irrigation instead of 2. So what I suggest is we might amend the thing and do it that way if you want to do that. But it looks like you're all pretty much in favor of the situation. Yeah, Director Gray, I've had
Motion. I can make a motion. I was going to make a motion to that effect because that's the consensus of the board, I think.
Yeah.
I move that we adopt resolution 592022 declaring a stage 3 water shortage warning and implementing shortage response actions, including a reduction in landscape watering to 1 day a week, which is an option we have under the resolution.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. And it looks like Vice President Dean is seconding that motion.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, now I have to repeat it. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 59-2022. And now this is where I'm having a problem with the additional, Director Gray, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, declaring, with the wording there, declaring a stage 3 water shortage warning and implementing shortage response actions, including a reduction in landscape watering to 1 day a week.
Oh, thank you.
As is our option under stage 3.
The specific wording would be to change Exhibit A so that the second action would read 1 day per week.
Okay.
And then there's also a clerical error in Exhibit A, and that is the word exhibit. But we'll fix that.
Yeah, exhibit.
Exhibit was an exhibit to the resolution.
Okay, so I think Ms. Riedel, I think we can if you need help from me later, we can go over the recording and get but I think we've got it. I think everybody knows what we're voting on, which is really important. So I think if there's no further discussion, let us go for a vote.
Is there a second?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, let's go for a vote, shall we? Yeah, so Ms. Riedel, please.
Yes. Okay, Director Gray.
Aye.
Director Gray, aye. Vice President Dean.
Aye.
Vice President Dean, aye. Director Farmer.
Aye.
Director Farmer, aye. Director Steidel.
Aye.
Director Steidel, aye. And President Howell.
Aye.
President Howell, aye.
We have 5 ayes, no nays. The motion passes unanimously, and the hearing is now closed. So in the next couple of minutes, in 1 minute, does anybody have any future agenda items?
I don't.
I can think of a lot of stuff to talk about, but I think we're okay at this point. So at that point, then I think we can go ahead and adjourn. A reminder that our closed session is canceled, right? We did announce that, didn't we? In the minute that's left, though, there was a mention that we might need a special meeting during the last 2 weeks in this month. Does anyone have any particular days when let me put it this way. Could you, to save time, I don't want to do the discussion now. Could you folks email me with your availability for the next 2 weeks? And then that way we can kind of work it through. Okay, well, in that case, if no one has anything more, oh yeah, GM Weigel, your hand was up. Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
You're muted.
Muted.
Try again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Availability's just popped up by email, so it looks like the best days are going to be August 30th and 31st, just for FYI.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you guys email me with your preferences in terms of time and date?
Yeah, you can tell right now the 31st is my preference.
Okay, but email me just so we don't lose track there. And you might want to include the times that are preferable as well. Okay. Well, excellent. That's working beautifully. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you all. It was actually a good meeting, and it didn't go too long. Yeah, Director Seidel. Oh, you're saying,
No, I'm going. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
without objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. That was a very good meeting.